Chapter 477. Now that he had found his way, the rest was no longer a problem. Lin Feng closed his eyes, and his consciousness entered Space One. He planned to try out the new fusion technique first and see if it was as effective as the fusion technique of mixed laws. If it could surpass it, it would prove that his speculation was correct. If it could not, he would have to think of another way. However, he was very confident that this method would work. The first technique of the 100 casting techniques, the invisible hammer formed by mental power, fell with a loud bang. The thunderous force was enough to make one's heart tremble. Lin Feng stopped and was extremely surprised. I changed the mixed laws into the spatial laws, but there's no sense of unfamiliarity. It's as if I've practiced it countless times. He lowered his head and pondered. Is it because the spatial laws are one of the mixed laws? Is that why it's like this? But other people... Suddenly, his eyes widened. I understand. Before other people become craftsmen saints, they fuse profundities into their fusion techniques, not laws. Therefore, when they become craftsmen saints, they have to change their profundities into laws. Naturally, the difficulty will increase exponentially, and they might not even be able to advance for the rest of their lives. However, I'm different. I've fused laws from the beginning, and the spatial laws are also one of the 7 laws that make up the mixed laws. That's why this happened. After figuring out the key, Lin Feng could not help but be pleasantly surprised. It turned out that he had been ahead of others from the very beginning. It was no wonder that every weapon or armor he refined was of such high quality. Presumably, in addition to his extremely skilled skills, the laws also played a large part in it. In the next moment, Lin Feng moved again. He released his mental power, which was turbulent and violent like the waves of the sea. In an instant, the shapeless hammer formed by spiritual energy hammered down countless times. Lin Feng couldn't help but let out a hearty chuckle. As expected, there is no difference between fusing the space laws and fusing the mixed laws. However, the effect of fusing the space laws has increased by dozens or even hundreds of times because it has changed from a mottled and impure law to a single pure law. This was because the spatial laws had been comprehended to perfection. When mixed with other laws, not only would it not be able to unleash the effect it should have, but it would also be greatly suppressed. Refining is like this, then is it the same in battle? Lin Feng fell into deep thought. The space laws are one of the 7 strongest laws. It's definitely not as simple as I imagined. Although I've comprehended it to perfection, I'm still far from being able to use the space laws. Looks like I'll have to spend some time studying the laws of space in the future. He knew that he was far from being able to use the true power of the laws of space. Since the law of space had the word space in it, there was bound to be some use of space. For example, teleportation, and so on. Wasn't it precisely because countercurrent had some characteristics of space and time that it was so terrifying? Number 1, do you know how to use the law of space? Lin Feng asked. Number 1 had contributed to the evolution of space Number 1 into a physical space. Presumably, Number 1 knew something. Number 1 answered honestly, I don't know how to use the law of space, but I know how to use the power of space. Lin Feng was delighted. Quick, tell me. Actually, the power of space has too many uses. Master can't use most of them. I'll just briefly talk about 2 uses. These 2 uses should be of great help to Master. Number 1 said indifferently, the first use is teleportation. As long as you understand its principle, with Master's understanding of the law of space, you'll be able to use it in reality in an instant. Teleportation is very simple. It's just compressing the power of space into 2 points and attaching them to a spatial wall. Then, connecting these 2 points, you'll be able to travel through space from one point to the other. The limit of teleportation is the limit of Master's mental power. The power of space laws needed to be controlled by mental power, and activated by origin energy. Therefore, anything outside the range of mental power was naturally not within the scope of the laws. Teleportation. Even with Lin Feng's indifferent nature, he couldn't help but be overjoyed at this moment. He had been in the Sui-Yang realm for so long, but he had never heard of anyone being able to teleport. Even Earth Sage Great Perfection couldn't do it. If he had this ultimate skill, or rather a skill of the laws, then his life would be further protected. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he would be invincible against anyone below Earth Sage Great Perfection. However, if it wasn't necessary, he wouldn't easily use teleportation. This was his trump card. If he used it at a critical moment, there would be unexpected gains. That's great. Lin Feng couldn't help but pat number one's shoulder. He was rather excited. What's the second one? The second one is the space black hole. When number one mentioned the space black hole, a trace of seriousness appeared on his calm face. If Master encounters an enemy that's too strong and you can't get rid of them with teleportation, then you can only use the space black hole. The space black hole is a technique that concentrates all the power of space laws in one place and compresses it to the limit. It's supported by rotational power, thus destroying the spatial wall and forming an existence similar to a black hole. The place it leads to is the spatial turbulence. The spatial turbulence is extremely dangerous. Even if a cultivator with perfect comprehension of the law of space goes in, it'll be very dangerous. Unless it's absolutely necessary, Master must never use this move. Lin Feng nodded solemnly. I understand. The space black hole was the ultimate life-saving trump card, but it was also an extremely dangerous trump card. Lin Feng was very satisfied that he had inadvertently obtained 2 more precious law skills. Alright, number 1, I'll go out first. He smiled at number 1 and left space number 1. He stayed in space number 1 for an incense stick's time, but in the eyes of others, it was only a moment. Perhaps even the blink of an eye was longer than that. Taking a deep breath, Lin Feng adjusted his emotions. He was too excited now and definitely not suitable for refining. After a moment, he slowly exhaled and completely calmed down, returning to his calm state. I can start now. As soon as he opened his eyes, he separated a part of his mind energy and formed an invisible giant hammer. He began to forge. With his current strength and control, he was able to fuse more than 900 fusion techniques with a single strike. The pupils of the core disciples of the weapon refining peak suddenly shrank as they looked at this scene in shock. Stunning. Incomparably stunning. The technique that was more natural than the one in the textbooks, the fusion of countless fusion skills, and the profound and obscure trajectory made them feel as if they had seen the birth, growth, and destruction of a world. This was the reincarnation of a world. An aura that made their souls tremble spread out in the weapon refining pavilion, containing the kindness, love, and generosity of the earth. They stared at the invisible giant hammer in the furnace, their eyes full of shock. Although most of the other disciples of the main peak did not know how to refine weapons, they also realized how powerful Lin Feng was. How did he do it? Mo Zhu and Nan Yang looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. I'm afraid that even the peak master is not as good as him. Boom! A loud noise suddenly came from the furnace, shocking the hearts of the core disciples of the weapon refining peak. Nan Yang's body was shaking and his face was pale. He bitterly said, "The gap between him and us is so big." For a refining genius, this was an unbearable blow. Refining a sacred artifact was a long-term, complicated, and laborious task. Perfect-grade materials were different from ordinary materials. If one wanted to refine them into a sacred artifact, they needed to be continuously forged and fused repeatedly. Only after a long time could one gradually change the materials and bestow the weapon or armor with the corresponding abilities or characteristic. Time dragged on, and the weapon refining pavilion was dead silent. After an unknown period of time, and after several days and nights, Lin Feng's movements finally stopped. The loud noise that was incessant finally disappeared. In the furnace, the 9 perfect-grade materials had completely fused into one. It looked like an armor with strange light flowing around it. Waves of surging aura were emitted from the embryonic armor. It was like a peerless sword that had been unsheathed. The sword light soared into the sky, piercing through the heavens. The last step. Lin Feng's expression was solemn, and his mind was highly concentrated. The moment the armor embryo took shape, he put his index and middle fingers together, and a beam of origin energy containing the power of the law of space shot out from his fingertips and struck the armor embryo that had just taken shape. Nirvana. Seeing this, Nanyang, Emoju, Lu Hu, Sun Yu, and the other core disciples of the weapon refining peak could not help but exclaim, "No!" However, it was too late. That terrifying wave of elemental energy had already struck the embryonic armor and rapidly swallowed the essence of the embryonic armor that had just formed. The embryonic armor that was still in its infancy suddenly trembled and then dimmed. At its peak, it had been struck into a bottomless abyss, as if its vitality had been stripped away. "You, how can you do this?" Emoju was furious. "Lin Feng, stop. If this goes on, you will destroy the armor," Nanyang urged anxiously. The rest of the weapon crafting peak disciples were also anxious and angry. How could they just watch as a perfect masterpiece was destroyed right in front of their eyes? Lin Feng did not seem to hear their voices. He opened his palm and lifted it up, and the entire furnace was lifted into the air. The index and middle fingers of his other hand once again shot out a yuan power that contained the power of the law of space, and it hit the armor embryo. The furnace slowly rotated in the air, and the armor embryo in the furnace rotated with it. Lin Feng's movements became faster and faster, and more yuan power shot out and hit the armor. The interval between each hit became shorter and shorter, and the essence of the armor embryo became thinner and thinner. It was like a flame in the wind, and could be extinguished at any time. After about half an incense stick's time, Lin Feng stopped and withdrew his hands. The furnace slowly fell back to the ground. Wiping the sweat off his forehead, Lin Feng let out a long sigh of relief. This last personal signature technique was the most difficult step for him. Fortunately, he had succeeded in passing this stage. The core disciples of the weapon refining peak all looked at Lin Feng angrily. Even if Jing Ting was here, their anger could not be quelled. However, Lin Feng's expression was very calm. He calmly looked at the armor embryo. He could feel that the last bit of essence of the armor was rapidly growing at an astonishing speed. It would only take a moment for it to reach its peak. At that time, the armor would be a complete armor, and not an armor embryo. Just as Mo Zhu was about to scold Lin Feng, the armor that had been calm for a long time suddenly released a blinding light. At the same time, 3 deafening thunderclaps suddenly sounded in the air. Boom! 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 The words at the tip of Mo Zhu's tongue turned into shock. She exclaimed, 3 thunderclaps, this is a 3rd revolution sacred armor. The value of a sacred armor was often several times, or even dozens of times higher than a sacred artifact of the same level. It was extremely difficult to make. Usually, a 3rd revolution sacred armor's value was comparable to a 5th revolution sacred artifact, and it was even more difficult to make. In other words, only a high-tier Earth-rank weapon refiner could make a 3rd revolution sacred armor. However, Lin Feng, a core disciple of the weapon refining peak, had actually made a 3rd revolution sacred armor. In the weapon refining pavilion, everyone was petrified. Chapter 478. Unlike the Xingfen continent, in the Suiyang realm, any weapon or armor that was not a saint artifact would not be able to trigger the lightning. Even the low-grade and mid-grade saint artifacts would not be able to trigger the lightning. Only the 7th grade, 8th grade, and 9th grade saint artifacts would trigger the lightning. However, the saint armor was different. Even though the low-grade saint armor could not trigger the lightning, it could trigger the thunder of heaven and earth. A 1st grade saint armor would trigger 1, a 2nd grade saint armor would trigger 2, and a 3rd grade saint armor would trigger 3. A mid-grade saint armor was like a high-grade saint artifact and could trigger the lightning tribulation. If it passed, it would stay in the world for a long time. If not, it would disappear from the world. Since ancient times, only one person had successfully created a high-grade saint armor. However, it was said that the armor was not created in the Suiyang realm. Therefore, no one knew what would happen when a high-grade saint armor was created. The fact that Lin Feng could forge the 3rd Revolution saint armor didn't mean that he was an Earth-class blacksmith. It only meant that he wasn't any weaker than an Earth-class blacksmith in terms of forging saint armor. He could be called a pseudo-Earth-class blacksmith. Even though the 3 thunderous sounds did not form a lightning tribulation, it was so powerful that it alarmed everyone in the Shantian sect. Only those in the Heaven Stairway world did not notice the commotion in the outside world. This was because the Heaven Stairway world was an independent space created by a powerful being. Medicine Peak. 3 thunderous sounds, the 3rd grade saint armor is born. Long Hua frowned and looked at the direction of the thunderous sounds. It's the blacksmith peak. Could it be that Xie Xiaofeng has advanced to an Earth-grade blacksmith? A high-tier Earth-grade blacksmith had an incomparably revered status. Their identity was also extremely honorable, and they were treated with respect by countless experts. They were on equal footing with super-experts of the 6th stage of the Earth-grade. Although there was only a fine line between Earth-grade mid-grade and Earth-grade high-grade, the gap between them was immeasurable. Once one advanced from Earth-grade mid-grade to Earth-grade high-grade, it was like a fish leaping through the Dragon Gate. Only an Earth CLA's high-tier blacksmith could forge the 3rd Revolution sacred armor. This was publicly acknowledged. Therefore, Long Hua immediately thought of Xie Xiaofeng. Only Xie Xiaofeng had reached the middle tier of the Earth CLA's blacksmith peak. The great elder Yen Tian and the core chief disciple Nanyang were only at the beginning tier of the Earth CLA's blacksmith peak. It was impossible for them to break through to the high tier of the Earth CLA's alchemy peak. Yi Changtian's face was gloomy as he looked at weapon refining peak. He actually advanced to the Earth stage high rank. This was the result he was most unwilling to see. He had always been on bad terms with Xie Xiaofeng, and was the most obvious enemy in the entire Shantian sect. As long as he had the chance, he would find fault with Xie Xiaofeng. The reason was that the metal refining peak had been suppressed by the weapon refining peak too miserably. He had suffered too many losses under the hands of the previous peak master and elders of the weapon refining peak. Now, he was only collecting some interest. All along, his strength had been slightly weaker than Xie Xiaofeng's, but his artifact refining ability was slightly better than Xie Xiaofeng's. This balance had been maintained for millions of years. He had always thought that he would be promoted to an Earth-grade high-rank armament master one step earlier than Xie Xiaofeng. Who would have thought that the accident would come so quickly? He had just felt the barrier and still needed to spend a large amount of time to attack it, but the other party had already been promoted to an Earth-grade high-rank armament master one step ahead of him. Xie Xiaofeng. Yi Changtian's mood was extremely depressed. Waves of anger and unwillingness surged in his heart. Mad Battle Peak, Array Peak, Gathering Peak, Cooking Peak, Fair Maiden Peak, City Region Peak, everyone in the main peaks of Shantian sect was shocked. I'm afraid the situation of the 10 main peaks is going to change again. Their hearts became heavy. Heaven's Stairway World. Xie Xiaofeng lowered his head and bent his waist. His legs trembled slightly as he resisted the terrifying pressure and slowly stood up. Although large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, his eyes were extremely calm. Suddenly, a strange sound came from his voice transmission jade slip. Frowning slightly, he flipped his hand and took out the voice transmission jade slip. Using his mental energy to communicate with it, he heard First Elder Yen Tian's excited voice transmission. Peak Lord, congratulations, congratulations to Peak Lord for advancing to an Earth-grade high rank, congratulations. Yen Tian seemed to be so happy that his speech was a little incoherent. Hearing First Elder's voice transmission, a trace of doubt flashed in Xie Xiaofeng's eyes. He was very puzzled. What was this Yen Tian doing? Who would have thought that before he could reply, he would receive voice transmissions from the other elders of Crafting Peak? The content was basically the same as First Elder Yen Tian's. There was no difference. Advanced to an Earth-grade high rank? Who said that I advanced to an Earth-grade high rank? Xie Xiaofeng frowned deeply. Although he had recently sensed that layer of barrier, he was still thousands of miles away from breaking through. Could it be that someone is deliberately spreading rumors here, and then clarifying the rumors in one fell swoop to reduce my prestige? However, as the Peak Lord of Crafting Peak, his prestige had already fallen to a freezing point. How much could it be reduced by? For a moment, Xie Xiaofeng was like a monk, scratching his head in confusion. One by one, they all said that they were congratulating him for advancing to an Earth-grade middle-rank craftsman. There must be some misunderstanding. I'd like to see who is playing tricks when I'm not around. If I find out who has bad intentions, I won't let them off easily. Xie Xiaofeng snorted coldly as a cold and sharp light flashed in his eyes. In the next moment, he retreated to the third step of the heaven stairway and jumped out of the heaven stairway. Flying at extreme speed, he reached the exit of the heaven stairway world in about 10 breaths of time. He did not clarify the matter immediately. Instead, he planned to investigate carefully first to avoid alerting the enemy. After exiting the heaven stairway world, he flew towards the peak. However, halfway there, he stopped and looked into the distance. Xie Xiaofeng. He saw Long Hua, Yi Changtian, Zhang Lai, Yen Chao, Ji Shen, Feng Haoren, and Yun Hua flying straight towards him. It seemed that they were also there because of his advancement to an Earth-grade high-rank craftsman. Could it be that they're not behind this? Xie Xiaofeng was puzzled. However, he did not show it on his face and quietly waited for their arrival. It's only been 10 years since we last met. I didn't expect you to advance to an Earth-grade high-rank craftsman so quickly. Third Revolution Sacred Armor. Other than the sect leader and the 3 supreme elders, only 3 of the 7 true disciples have the Third Revolution Sacred Armor. I didn't expect Peak Lord Xie to have refined one. Xie Xiaofeng, can you show us the Third Revolution Sacred Armor that you've just refined? That's right. Although we've heard of the Third Revolution Sacred Armor, we haven't seen it in detail. We're really curious. Other than Yi Changtian, the rest of them spoke. Some were surprised, some congratulated, and some hoped to see the Third Revolution Sacred Armor that Xie Xiaofeng had refined. However, Xie Xiaofeng did not have the Third Revolution Sacred Armor. He glanced at Long Hua and the rest and said, "You've misunderstood. I haven't advanced to an Earth-grade high-rank craftsman and I haven't refined the Third Revolution Sacred Armor. If someone has really refined the Third Revolution Sacred Armor, it should be someone else. You've found the wrong person." Hearing this, Zhang Lai was unhappy. Xie Xiaofeng, who doesn't know that you're the only Earth-grade middle-rank craftsman in the Craftsman Peak? The other 2 Earth-grade craftsmen have been stuck at the beginner rank. Other than you, who else can refine the Third Revolution Sacred Armor? Yen Chao nodded in agreement. That's right. Peak Lord Xie, we just want to see how the Third Revolution Sacred Armor looks like. We're not stealing from you. Why do you have to hide it? Xie Xiaofeng, we're all smart people. Why do you have to pretend to be dumb? In the end, Long Hua smiled. Xie Xiaofeng, we all heard the 3 claps of thunder just now. You don't have to hide it. We just want to see the 3rd revolution sacred armor. It's refined by you, so it's naturally yours. No one will dare to steal it from you. I can guarantee that. Yun Hua did not force him. Women were more sensitive, and it was easier for her to notice that Xie Xiaofeng was not lying. Xie Xiaofeng smiled bitterly. Everyone, you've really made a mistake. I really haven't refined the 3rd revolution sacred armor. I've been in the Heaven's Stairway world all this time. You should know the rules of the Heaven's Stairway world. How can I refine the 3rd revolution sacred armor in there? Yi Changtian raised his eyebrows and said in a serious tone, Xie Xiaofeng, you're pushing your luck. We're just asking you to take out the 3rd revolution sacred armor for us to see. Are you really going to deny it? Everyone was unhappy. They had already said so much, and Long Hua had even made a guarantee. However, Xie Xiaofeng was still being stubborn. It was no wonder that they were so angry. Hearing this, Xie Xiaofeng took a deep breath and said in a sonorous tone, You've known me for thousands of years. When have you ever seen me lie? What's more, if I'm really promoted to a high-rank Earth-level craftsman, what's wrong with admitting it? This is a great honor. Why should I refuse it? He looked at Long Hua, Yi Changtian, and the others. Since you don't believe me, I swear to the heavens that this 3rd revolution sacred armor was not refined by me. If there's even half a lie, may the heavens and earth destroy me. At this, Long Hua and the others stopped. It was not that they believed Xie Xiaofeng's oath, but after careful consideration, they realized that Xie Xiaofeng really did not need to lie about this kind of thing. First, there was no need to lie. Second, no one could refuse such an honor. It's really not you? Yi Changtian stared at Xie Xiaofeng with burning eyes, as if he wanted to see through Xie Xiaofeng. Xie Xiaofeng said lightly, It's not me. Long Hua and the others were confused. If it was not Xie Xiaofeng, then who was it? Other than Xie Xiaofeng, there were other mid-rank Earth-level craftsmen in weapon refining peak? This was obviously impossible. However, judging from Xie Xiaofeng's reaction, the person who refined the 3rd revolution sacred armor was really not him. If it's not you, then who is it? Long Hua and the others fell into deep thought. Of course, they were confused, but Xie Xiaofeng was more confused than them. They were depressed, but Xie Xiaofeng was more depressed than them. This kind of thing happened inexplicably. He was more puzzled than anyone else and wanted to know what was going on more than anyone else. You don't have to guess. If you want to know who it is, go to the peak and you should know the answer. Xie Xiaofeng said lightly. Chapter 479. How You House, Forging Pavilion. Lin Feng dripped a drop of blood on the 3rd revolution saint armor. The armor immediately broke into pieces and covered the surface of Lin Feng's skin as if it had a mind of its own. It was shapeless and incorporeal, so it was impossible to see its existence. Only when Yuan Li and mental energy were used in battle could it be revealed. With the 3rd revolution saint armor and my Earth 5th layer initial stage body, even a Earth 5th layer intermediate stage expert wouldn't be able to hurt me. Even a Earth 5th layer late stage expert would only be able to injure me lightly. They wouldn't be able to kill me in one blow. Lin Feng estimated his defense. From today onwards, my defense can be considered to have no weaknesses. In a good mood, a smile appeared on his face. Inadvertently, he saw Jing Ting and the others and couldn't help but ask in astonishment, Why are you here? Jing Ting said softly, It's been 10 years, but we haven't seen each other. She wanted to say something but hesitated. Her tone contained a trace of bitterness. Hearing this, the surrounding people were envious of Lin Feng. This kind of proud daughter of heaven actually revealed her feminine side in front of Lin Feng. She was extremely shy. What did Lin Feng do to make this girl so loyal? Lin Feng smiled awkwardly and said apologetically, "Sorry, Jing Ting took a few steps forward and quickly covered his mouth. She shook her head and said softly, "I know, you don't have to explain. Actually, it's all my fault for being greedy." "Jing Ting. Don't call me Jing Ting, just call me Tinger." Saying this, Jing Ting lowered her head shyly. Lin Feng was stunned for a moment and immediately changed the way he addressed her. "Tinger, I know these days have been hard on you. I'm sorry, I'll definitely spend more time with you in the future." Jing Ting blinked and said softly, "It's okay." Looking at the beauty beside him, Lin Feng couldn't help but sigh in his heart. With a wife like this, what more can a husband ask for? The two's tenderness made the surrounding people envious. This sweet atmosphere made them somewhat reluctant to disturb. Mo Zhu smiled bitterly. In the end, she could not help but say, "You two should think about how to deal with the trouble outside first." Hearing this, Lin Feng raised his head to look at Mo Zhu and asked doubtfully, "May I ask this lady?" "She is the leader of our Crafting Peak's core disciples, senior sister Mo Zhu. And senior brother Nanyang, the only core disciple of our Crafting Peak." Lin Feng glanced at Mo Zhu and the young man beside Mo Zhu, whose aura was restrained. He turned around and bowed to the two of them as equals. "Greetings, senior sister Mo Zhu and senior brother Nanyang." "Don't mention it, junior brother." Nanyang returned the greeting and said with a smile, "Just as Mo Zhu said, we should first think about how to deal with the people outside." Lin Feng looked at the two of them in confusion, then lowered his head to look at Jing Ting beside him and asked, "Ting what happened?" Mo Zhu widened her eyes. "You don't know?" Lin Feng did not know whether to laugh or cry. "I was crafting just now. During the crafting process, I was focused and had no time to be distracted. Of course, I don't know what happened outside." Hearing this, many of the Crafting Peak's chief disciples sighed to themselves. No wonder he could craft the Third Revolution holy armor. It's natural for someone like him to achieve great things. They could not imagine how focused one must be to be able to ignore everything that happened outside. With this kind of focus, what could he not do? "Ting tell me, what happened outside?" Lin Feng asked. Jing Ting hesitated and said, "It's Jueshin Duo Kun from the Alchemy Peak. He heard that you came out of seclusion, so he brought a group of Alchemy Peak's core disciples to find trouble with you. They want to force you to accept a deathmatch. This guy is so relentless." Lin Feng frowned as his eyes fell on Sun Yu and Lu Hu. He saw that the two of them were battered and exhausted. Mo Zhu and Nanyang also looked a little battered, as if they had already fought and didn't get any benefits. He understood. "Thank you for your help just now." He looked at Nanyang, Mo Zhu and the rest with sincerity and finally looked at Jing Ting. He said gently, "It's been hard on you." Although Jing Ting did not explain in detail, he knew that Jueshin Duo Kun did not disturb his crafting. It was probably Jing Ting who settled the situation in the end. However, the core disciples of the Crafting Peak would not be able to stop Jueshin Duo Kun, not to mention that Jueshin Duo Kun had brought so many experts with him. Jing Ting did not explain much, but asked, "What do you plan to do?" "That Jueshin Duo Kun is arrogant, but he has the right to be arrogant. I observed him just now. His strength is definitely not lower than the middle stage of Earth Stage 5. With the power of the Tiger Soul Blade, even a late-stage Earth Stage 5 expert would not be his match. He's just a clown." Lin Feng smiled faintly and did not care at all. He looked at Jing Ting and smiled faintly. "You, on the other hand, after not seeing you for 10 years, your strength has grown to such a level. I have misjudged you before." Jing Ting rolled her eyes at him, with a hint of flirtatiousness. However, she was still worried about Jueshin Duo Kun. She said, "You have not been cultivating for long. That El Jueshin Duo Kuan is an expert who has been famous for a long time. Lin Feng, why don't you? Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I won't do anything risky. Lin Feng waved his hand to stop Jing Ting from speaking and smiled. Hearing this, Jing Ting, Nan Yang and the rest were relieved, thinking that Lin Feng had agreed to Jing Ting's suggestion. Let's go out and take a look. Lin Feng took the lead and walked outside. Many core disciples of the weapon refining peak followed behind silently. Although they had not known Lin Feng for long and had not even spoken much, Lin Feng's style of speech and confidence had convinced them. Unconsciously, they had subconsciously treated Lin Feng as their backbone. Perhaps even they themselves had not realized it. Of course, the reason was not only because of Lin Feng's confidence and style of speech. The biggest reason was that Lin Feng had forged the third transformation holy armor. The core disciples of the Fair Maiden Peak had their eyes fixed on Lin Feng. They stared at him as if they wanted to see what was so special about Lin Feng. He looked like an extremely ordinary young man. How could he forge the legendary third transformation holy armor? Lin Feng. Outside the weapon refining pavilion, as soon as Lin Feng's figure appeared, El Jueshin Dokun stood up and looked at Lin Feng with burning eyes. He sneered. I thought you would hide in the weapon refining pavilion for the rest of your life. Why, you don't want to continue being a coward. The core disciples of the Potion Peak, Wild Battle Peak, Formation Peak, and other main peaks all looked at Lin Feng. Yan Luo, Huashen, and Yun Zhongzi also stared at Lin Feng with serious and solemn expressions. They would never forget the lonely figure who had climbed the stairway to heaven in the Heaven Stairway world. Lin Feng, long time no see. How have you been? Yan Luo smiled faintly. Huashen also stared at Lin Feng and said slowly, It's been 10 years. I wonder how much you've improved in the past 10 years. Yun Zhongzi did not say a word. He just looked at Lin Feng quietly. However, in his heart, he also valued Lin Feng very much. This kind of importance even exceeded the importance he attached to Yan Luo, Huashen, El Jueshin Dokun, and even Jing Ting. Now, Yan Luo, Huashen, El Jueshin Dokun, and Yun Zhongzi had all become the most outstanding core disciples of their respective main peaks. They were the most influential figures in their respective main peak. The geniuses of the older generation were all beaten black and blue in front of them. The four geniuses gradually bloomed with brilliant brilliance and stirred up the storm in Shuntian sect. They were in the limelight and no one could shake their edge. However, in their eyes, Lin Feng, the thin young man who had once suppressed them in the stairway to heaven, was still their only opponent. Since they were born, even though they'd experienced countless failures, all of them had failed because of old fellows who were older and stronger than them. It was Lin Feng who truly allowed them to experience the feeling of failure, and he was a nobody from a mere low-level plane, Xingfeng Plain. This kid is Lin Feng? I don't see anything special about him. Did Yan Luo, Huashen, and the other talented junior brothers really lose to him? I'm afraid it's because of luck. Although junior brother Yan Luo and the others lost to him because of carelessness, after 10 years of hiding their strength and biding their time, the four junior brothers' strength has increased greatly and their talents have been perfectly displayed. They are no longer the same as before. This Lin Feng is definitely not their opponent. Yes, if not, why would Lin Feng hide in the weapon refining pavilion for several days? If it weren't for the fact that things have come to this, I'm afraid he would continue to hide. Although I have no enmity with Lin Feng, I'm still not optimistic about him. The four great geniuses are famous in Shuntian Prefecture. Everyone knows about them. It can be said that they are rare geniuses in Shuntian Prefecture for thousands of years. The talents of the several young lords may not be stronger than them. How can anyone be on par with them? Forgive me for not agreeing with your words. I don't know whether Lin Feng is comparable to them or not, But the goddess of Fair Maiden Peak is definitely more terrifying than these four geniuses. Cough cough. She is an exception. It's already a miracle that Xingfeng realm has such a proud daughter of heaven like her. How can there be a second one? The core disciples from the other peaks who had come to watch the show began to discuss in low voices. Although most of them were not optimistic about Lin Feng, a nameless junior, was able to stir up a storm in Shuntian sect, which made them quite admire him. Lin Feng. Juexin Du Kuan's patience had run out. He did not want to wait a moment longer. His eyes were wide open, and his gaze was as sharp as a knife. I, Juexin Du Kuan, challenge you to a life-and-death battle in front of countless people. Do you dare to accept the challenge? 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 The surroundings were silent. These sonorous words reverberated in the surroundings. Everyone's gaze was on Lin Feng, waiting for Lin Feng's answer. They had heard of Juexin Du Kuan's strength. He was a mid-stage Earth Stage 5, and with the power of the Tiger Soul Saber, even a late-stage Earth Stage 5 expert would not be able to win against him. Did Lin Feng dare to accept the challenge? One must know that this was a life-and-death battle, and not an ordinary challenge. A life-and-death battle must determine life and death. Lin Feng, don't accept his challenge. Mo Zhu and Nanyang said almost simultaneously. Chapter 480. After Mo Zhu and Nanyang, Lu Hu and Sun Yu also said anxiously, Junior Lin Feng, you can't accept it. The other core disciples of the crafting peak shouted anxiously, Junior Lin Feng, we can all accept the deathmatch, but you can't. That's right, I'm willing to accept the deathmatch for you. Even if I die, so what? The crafting peak has been declining for millions of years. Now that you're here, we can't suffer another setback. The core disciples of the crafting peak were anxious and agitated. Their words were full of protectiveness, afraid that something bad would happen to Lin Feng. Other than themselves, no one could understand how they felt. As a core disciple of the weapon refining peak, even though they were no longer under the control of the weapon refining peak in name, they had lived here for countless years and had long treated the weapon refining peak as their second home. Furthermore, as a core disciple of the weapon refining peak, once they went outside, they would be looked down upon by others and would not be accepted by outsiders. Thus, the weapon refining peak had become their only warm and cozy paradise. After countless years, they had developed a strong attachment to this declining peak. Perhaps there were internal conflicts within the crafting peak, but it was not like the other peaks where life and death were easily decided. Moreover, if there were any conflicts between the crafting peak and the other peaks, the core disciples of the crafting peak were extremely united and would not let their own people suffer. Therefore, in the eyes of outsiders, the core disciples of the crafting peak were extremely united. Even the disciples of the Fair Maiden Peak, who prided themselves on being united, were not as united as this. As a core disciple of the crafting peak, if Lin Feng had a conflict with outsiders, they should protect him without question. Moreover, Lin Feng was extremely important to the crafting peak and was a key figure in the rise of the crafting peak. Therefore, their protection had reached an outrageous level that outsiders could not understand. Their intense reaction shocked even Juexin Dokan, who had issued the challenge to the death. Even Lin Feng, one of the main characters of the deathmatch, could not help but be moved. Juexin Duokuan, although I'm not your opponent, I'm willing to accept your deathmatch on behalf of Junior Lin Feng. Nanyang pulled out his sword and took a step forward. His eyes were filled with a kind of farewell to death. There was no trace of fear in them. Instead, his fighting spirit was high. Mo Zhu also stepped forward, her voice as cold as ice. Juexin Dokan, you can hurt junior brother Lin Feng, but you'll have to do it over my dead body. Lu Hu and Sun Yu looked at each other and stood in front of Lin Feng without fear of death. They said, Eljuishindoken, you can kill us, but don't even think about touching a hair on junior brother Lin Feng. The other core disciples of the weapon refinement peak were affected as well. One by one, they drew their weapons and strode in front of Lin Feng, shielding him behind them as they roared, "As long as one of us is alive, don't even think about touching a single hair of junior brother Lin Feng." The high-spirited sound of farewell caused the ground to tremble slightly. A solemn and stirring atmosphere pervaded Bright Moon House. At this moment, all the core disciples of the main peak were moved. They looked at this scene with incomparable shock. Are they crazy? Finally, their shocked gazes fell on Lin Feng. What kind of tricks does this kid have that all the core disciples of the weapon refinement peak are protecting him like this? Could it be that in the eyes of these people, Lin Feng's life is more important than their own? Lin Feng, oh Lin Feng, what kind of person are you that so many people are willing to go through fire and water for you? The core disciples of the various main peaks, Gatherer Peak, Cooking Peak, Battle-Crazed Peak, Formation Peak, Potion Peak, Alchemy Peak, City Region Peak, could not remain calm in such a solemn atmosphere. Looking at the core disciples of the weapon refinement peak, who were unafraid of death, they were very confused and very shocked. Yama's expression was very complicated. Looking at the many Potion Peak disciples behind him, he could not help but sigh. Can the core disciples of my Potion Peak risk their lives for me like this? After thinking about it, he smiled bitterly. He did not need to ask, he knew the answer himself. If not for his extraordinary talent and strength, which allowed him to defeat the experts of the older generation in the peak and intimidate everyone who would be willing to listen to his orders. Wu Xun's eyes were uncertain as he looked deeply at Lin Feng, as if he wanted to see through Lin Feng. Yun Zhongzi bit the corner of his lips with a complicated expression. He did not say anything, and no one knew what he was thinking. Even if they saw Lin Feng as their only opponent, they could not help but admire Lin Feng in their hearts. They had to admit that in this aspect they had lost again, and in a complete mess. There was no comparison at all. Eljuishin Duo Kuan was burning with jealousy. He could not wait to cut Lin Feng in half. He coldly turned his head and looked at the core disciples of the alchemy peak behind him. That cold gaze made their hearts palpitate. The core disciples of the alchemy peak, who were glanced at by him, were so frightened that they were covered in sweat. They lowered their heads, not daring to meet his gaze. Of course, they knew why Eljuishin Duo Kuan was so dissatisfied with them. They also knew how terrible Eljuishin Duo Kuan's mood was at this moment. However, they could not do anything about it. It was too difficult for them to sincerely obey Eljuishin Duo Kuan. After all, the situation of the alchemy peak was different from that of the crafting peak. Only through suffering could one develop deep feelings. The alchemy peak had never experienced this before, so naturally, they would not be as united as the crafting peak. This was a fact that no one could change. The scene in front of her made Jing Ting very proud. This was the man she liked. Was there anyone in the world who was more outstanding than him? The core disciples of the Fair Maiden Peak, who followed Jing Ting, were also very surprised. They were even more curious about Lin Feng. In the past, they had always thought that Lin Feng was not worthy of Jing Ting, and that Jing Ting should not be with Lin Feng. However, at this moment their thoughts had unknowingly changed. Perhaps it may not be wrong for junior sister Jing Ting to be with this guy. Their gazes fell on Lin Feng. Looking at that ordinary figure, they could feel that there was something extraordinary about it. Eljuishin Duo Kuan suppressed his crazy jealousy of Lin Feng and said with a murderous intent, "Lin Feng, I don't know what kind of sorcery you used on the people of the crafting peak, but do you really think that they can stop me?" Lin Feng glanced at Emoju, Nanyang, and the others. He could not help but shake his head and smile bitterly. He was very touched by the protection of the people of the crafting peak. It even brought him a trace of warmth that he had never felt before. It was as if he was being protected by his family. He had not experienced this feeling in a long time. In fact, he had not experienced this kind of warmth ever since he had transmigrated to the Wind Punishment realm. All this time, he had been fighting alone. Although he had friends, brothers, and loved ones along the way, he still felt lonely. He always felt that he did not fit in with this world. However, on this ordinary yet extraordinary day, he felt a long-lost warmth. It was a heart-warming feeling that made him want to cry. His gaze swept across Emoju, Nanyang, Sun Yu, Lu Hu, and the other core disciples of the Crafting Peak. From now on, these people were his brothers and sisters. They were the people that he, Lin Feng, would protect. As long as he, Lin Feng, was alive, he would not let anyone come to harm. Lin Feng silently promised in his heart. His gaze became even gentler. Lin Feng, Emoju, Nanyang, and the others looked at Lin Feng nervously. They were afraid that Lin Feng would accept El Jueshin Duo Kuan's challenge. Jing Ting stood beside him and said, "I hope that you will reject El Jueshin Duo Kuan. However, no matter what decision you make, I will support you." Lin Feng took a deep breath. Under their hopeful and worried gazes, he slowly bowed. "Thank you, everyone. To be honest, I never thought that you would be willing to go through fire and water for Lin Feng without fear of death. To be able to be a disciple of the Crafting Peak with all of you, I, Lin Feng, have not lived in vain." Yen Luo, Hua Shen, and the others looked at each other from afar. They smiled bitterly. "If it were me, I would not have lived in vain." Unfortunately, this was something that they could not be envious of. While they were thinking, Lin Feng slowly straightened his body. His expression was firm as he slowly said, however, a voice unexpectedly interrupted him, "What's going on? Why are you all gathered here?" Everyone nearby looked up. They saw 8 figures flash past and stop in the middle of the crowd. Xie Xiaofeng frowned slightly. "Why are you all gathered at the Bright Moon House?" Everyone looked at each other. Finally, Yen Luo cupped his fists and said, "We heard that Lin Feng has come out of seclusion and that El Jueshin Duo Kuan is here. Therefore, we came to join in the fun." "Nonsense." Long Hua pretended to scold him. However, he did not scold him too harshly. As an earth cultivator, it is okay to be curious. However, if you are too curious, it will affect your cultivation and be detrimental to your future. "I know my mistake," Yen Luo said lightly. Long Hua nodded in satisfaction. He didn't care whether Yen Luo really knew his mistake or not. He turned to Xie Xiaofeng and said, "I'm sorry, my disciple from Medicine Peak didn't know better and accidentally disturbed your weapon peak." Xie Xiaofeng glanced at him and then looked at Lin Feng. "Did you agree to El Jueshin Duo Kuan's deathmatch?" Lin Feng replied, "Not yet." Before he could finish, Xie Xiaofeng waved his hand and said, "Since you didn't agree, then why aren't you leaving El Jueshin Duo Kuan?" The second half of the sentence was obviously directed at El Jueshin Duo Kuan. "Wait." Yi Changtian said, "Xie Xiaofeng, since there are so many people here today, and they are all here to watch the battle, it is clear that everyone is looking forward to this battle. El Jueshin Duo Kuan is the #1 core disciple of Alchemy Peak. He was once defeated by Lin Feng, so he must be dissatisfied. There will definitely be a battle between the two of them. You and I cannot stop it. If we forcefully stop it, I am afraid it will cause even greater trouble in the future. Moreover, since Lin Feng was able to defeat El Jueshin Duo Kuan, he must be a rare genius. Do you think that Lin Feng is not as good as El Jueshin Duo Kuan?" Xie Xiaofeng stared coldly at Yi Changtian. However, Yi Changtian did not care at all. He said, "It is not impossible to make El Jueshin Duo Kuan leave. As long as Lin Feng is willing to admit in front of everyone that he is not as good as El Jueshin Duo Kuan, we will turn around and leave. El Jueshin Duo Kuan, what do you think?" "It is up to the Peak Master." Eljuoshin Duo Kun smiled faintly and looked at Lin Feng mockingly. However, I do not know if Lin Feng will agree. Chapter 481. Yi Changtian and Eljuoshin? Duo Kun and Yi Changtian were right. To make Lin Feng admit that he was not as good as Eljuoshin in front of all the peak masters and core disciples of Shuntian sect? Duo Kun, this was worse than killing him. If it was anyone else, they would not have agreed. This move of retreating in order to advance was truly vicious. Furthermore, even if Lin Feng really agreed, the ones benefiting would be Alchemy Peak and Eljuoshin. Duo Kun. It could be said that this suggestion was only beneficial to Alchemy Peak. If Lin Feng accepted the deathmatch, he would definitely die. Eljuoshin? Duo Kun's heart was undone and his strength had improved. Moreover, Alchemy Peak's prestige had increased greatly. If Lin Feng rejected the deathmatch and admitted that he was not as good as Eljuoshin, Duo Kun could achieve the same result. Although the latter could not kill Lin Feng, to a genius, such an incident would undoubtedly destroy his confidence, and he would not be able to achieve anything in the future. So ruthless. Everyone looked at Yi Changtian with eyes full of fear. Even Long Hua, who had always been close friends with Yi Changtian, had a trace of viciousness in her eyes. It was just that she did not show it. Out of everyone's expectations, Xie Xiaofeng, facing Yi Changtian's provocation, replied casually, "You guys can leave." Obviously, with his shrewdness, he had seen through Yi Changtian's plan. How could he agree to his suggestion? Xie Xiaofeng, don't be too overbearing. Do you think that the current crafting peak is still the same as it was millions of years ago? Yi Changtian said indifferently, the battle between the younger generation should be settled by them. It is not up to you to interfere. Otherwise, the sword in my hand, Yi Changtian, will not agree. Xie Xiaofeng stared at Yi Changtian for a long time before saying calmly, "Then let me see what you're capable of." Peak Master. Lin Feng said calmly, "The leader of the Alchemy Peak is right. The matters between us juniors should be solved by us juniors." Xie Xiaofeng frowned, turning his head to look at Lin Feng, remaining silent. This brat is simply courting death. The weapon refinery peak lord stepped out to protect him, but he still refused. Is he tired of living? Has his head been kicked by a donkey? At a time like this, how can he be willful? It seems like our previous evaluation wasn't completely wrong. This kid is indeed an arrogant and conceited person. Even if he has some good points, it cannot cover up his shortcomings. The people nearby shook their heads inwardly. Give me a reason. Xie Xiaofeng was a little annoyed, but he did not scold Lin Feng. Instead, he asked indifferently. Lin Feng met Xie Xiaofeng's questioning gaze and replied calmly, "I hope Peak Master has more confidence in me. Eljuoshin? Although Duo Kun is powerful, he may not be my match." His tone was indifferent, and his expression was calm and collected. There was no trace of panic, nor was there a trace of extreme emotion. He seemed to be incomparably confident. Hearing this, Xie Xiaofeng said in a low voice, "Do you know Eljuoshin? How strong is Duo Kun?" "Middle stage Earth Stage 5. Lin Feng replied simply, "That's right. Middle stage Earth Stage 5. And he also has a 5th Revolution Saint weapon, Tiger Soul Blade. His strength is so strong that even a late-stage Earth Stage 5 expert would find it difficult to fight him. Even if I personally went, I would have to be careful to win." Xie Xiaofeng nodded and asked calmly, "Do you still have confidence?" Lin Feng smiled faintly, "I know his strength, but I still have confidence in defeating him." Xie Xiaofeng stared at Lin Feng without moving. After a long while, he nodded slowly. "All right, I promise you." "Thank you, Peak Master." Lin Feng cupped his fists and said, "This matter started because of me, so let me end it. Many core disciples of the weapon refinery peak were worried. Had they seen Eljuashin with their own eyes? Duo Kun was strong, but they had never seen Lin Feng fight. Even Sun Yu and Lu Hu, who had seen Lin Feng fight, did not know Lin Feng's true strength. Thus, they could not help but worry for Lin Feng. Emoju cupped his fists and said solemnly, "Peak Master, I beg you to take back your order." Nanyang hesitated for a moment, then stood up and said, "Peak Master, please take back your order. Peak Master, please take back your order." The rest of the disciples, including Lu Hu and Sun Yu, said in unison. Xie Xiaofeng looked at them. He was surprised but also relieved. However, once he had made a decision, he would not change it easily. "You don't have to say any more. Let Lin Feng settle this matter himself. You should trust him." He believed that he was a good judge of character. Lin Feng gave him the feeling that he was very reliable. He would not do anything that he was not confident in. Since Lin Feng had accepted the deathmatch, it meant that Lin Feng was confident in defeating his opponent. Moreover, if he forcefully stood up for Lin Feng today, he was not afraid of himself. However, he was worried that Lin Feng would be traumatized by this and affect his future achievements. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he would not easily stand up for Lin Feng, unless it was an older generation bullying the weak. Seeing that things were not going well, Nanyang, Emoju, and the others lowered their heads with heavy hearts. Their hearts were filled with bitterness. "Be careful. I will wait for you to come back victorious." Jing Ting gently brushed away Lin Feng's bangs. Her expression was calm. Such an intimate action, under normal circumstances, would make her blush. However, at this moment, in the face of danger, she was not embarrassed at all. Instead, she acted naturally like a wife. Lin Feng gently held her hand and smiled. "Be good and wait for me to come back." Jing Ting was like a little girl as she nodded her head. "Okay." Taking a deep breath, Lin Feng looked around and said, "I did not expect that a nobody like me, Lin Feng, would attract so many people's curiosity. I am very honored." He let go of Jing Ting's hand and took a step forward towards Eljuashin Duo. Step by step, he walked towards Duo Kun slowly. His steps were steady and calm, as if he was taking a stroll in the park. There was no sign that he was about to enter a death match. Furthermore, his opponent was the famous #1 genius disciple of Alchemy Peak. Eljuashin? Duo Kun's wish came true. He laughed loudly. "You have guts." Long Hua, Zhang Lai, and the others smiled at this scene. Whether it was Lin Feng or Eljuashin, they did not care about Duo Kun. Who lived or died had nothing to do with them. They were purely curious and wanted to see how Lin Feng and Eljuashin would fare. They wanted to see who would win between Duo Kun and who would lose. Yan Luo, Wu Shun, and the others' eyes were bright and serious. They did not dare to be distracted. Could he be Eljuashin? Could he be Duo Kun's opponent? They looked at Lin Feng with complicated expressions. They did not want Lin Feng to die so easily, but they were also worried that Lin Feng was too strong. They felt very conflicted. Almost all the core disciples of the 10 main peaks had come after hearing the news. There were also 8 peak masters who came to watch the battle. This battle was destined to be passed down for a long time. No matter if Lin Feng won or lost, his name and story would be told by many people. Come to Eljuashin? When Lin Feng was about 10 meters away from Duo Kun, he suddenly stopped. He seemed to have something to say. His gaze swept across Yi Changtian, Long Hua, and the others. Yi Changtian, especially, felt very uncomfortable under his strange gaze. "Why? Are you going back on your word?" Yi Changtian said indifferently. "I'm not going back on my word," Lin Feng said calmly. "I never go back on my decision, even if it is wrong." Yi Changtian frowned. "Then what do you want to do?" Lin Feng looked at Yi Changtian and said, "I hope that the Peak Masters can agree to a request before the life and death duel." "What is it? Let's hear it," Long Hua said with interest. Lin Feng looked at Yi Changtian and said, I hope that the peak masters can abide by the rules of the life and death duel. No matter the result, you cannot interfere before the life and death duel is over. I've heard people say that some people, because they can't bear to see their own people die in a battle of life and death, would use their strength and status to forcefully interfere and even personally kill their opponent when they see their own people about to be killed by their opponent. Although they will receive some punishment after the battle, it is not painful or itchy. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Changtian intentionally or unintentionally, as if he was hinting at something. I'm afraid that Peak Master Yi Changtian will see El Jueshin? When Duo Kun is about to die, he will attack in anger. Maybe he won't kill me directly, but I will definitely be heavily injured. After the battle, Peak Master Yi Changtian will casually explain that we are all geniuses that the Shuntian sect can't afford to lose. Whether it is round or flat, Peak Master Yi Changtian can do whatever he wants. In any case, I am a lowly person, so even if I am dissatisfied, there is nothing I can do. Such insinuations and oblique curses caused Yi Changtian to be extremely furious. He laughed in anger. What a joke! Yi Changtian, as the peak master of Gold Refining Peak, how can I do such a thing that will damage the reputation of the Shuntian sect? Whether you will do it or not, only Peak Master Yi Changtian will know. If what you said is true, then it will be for the best, but if not, then this loss won't Lin Feng eat it. Anyway, if I lose, I will die. If I win, not only will I not be able to kill my opponent, I will also be heavily injured. What's the point of this kind of life and death battle? Lin Feng stared at Yi Changtian and mocked himself. You! Yi Changtian was so angry that his mouth twitched, but in front of so many people, he could not lose his temper. He could only endure and say, Don't worry, I will not do such a tasteless thing. Lin Feng said, This disciple has heard of Peak Master Yi Changtian's deeds. Based on Peak Master Yi Changtian's way of doing things, this disciple cannot be at ease. Yi Changtian said coldly, Then what do you mean? Are you rejecting the life and death battle? No, everyone is looking forward to me and El Jueshin. Duo Kun's life and death battle, I naturally cannot disappoint everyone. Lin Feng smiled faintly, however, I need a promise from Peak Master Yi Changtian. No matter what happens in the life and death battle, you will not interfere. Peak Master Yi Changtian, do you dare to swear? Yi Changtian narrowed his eyes and stared coldly at Lin Feng. A dangerous aura spread out. After a moment, he suddenly laughed loudly. Ha ha ha! That's right, in countless years, you are the first core disciple who dares to question me like this. Since you don't believe me, what's so hard about me swearing? Yi Changtian, swear. After swearing, his eyes turned cold again. In his heart, he had already sentenced Lin Feng to death. Is that enough? Not enough. Lin Feng seemed to be unwilling to give up, but this time, he changed his target to Long Hua and the others. You are not going to fight, but it does not mean that the other peak masters will not fight. You can ask them to fight. Long Hua and the others looked at Lin Feng in shock. After a while, they did not know whether to laugh or cry. It seems that we are not trusted either. Fine, let us swear as well. Otherwise, we will not be able to continue watching today's battle. Finally, the peak masters present, including Xie Xiaofeng, all swore. Only then was Lin Feng satisfied. This disciple's words carry no weight. This is the only way to seek some fairness. I hope the peak masters do not mind. Lin Feng clasped his hands at Long Hua and the others, then turned to face El Jueshin Duo Kun. Duo Kun smiled. All right, now we can fight. Chapter 482. With Lin Feng's strength, he wasn't afraid of anyone present. However, if a few peak lords were to gang up on him, he would have no choice but to flee. Although he was confident, he wasn't arrogant enough to think that he was invincible under the heavens. There were many people who were more powerful than him. For example, the 7 true disciples. Any one of them could defeat him. Not to mention, above the 7 true disciples, there were still the 3 grand elders and the sovereign of the Shuntian sect. The 3 grand elders were at least at the 6th level of the Earth Saint realm. They might even be at the Great Circle of the Earth Saint realm. Lin Feng did not have the ability to fight against a Great Circle of the Earth Saint realm, so he had to be careful. Other than that, he also had to consider Huang Wenbing, Jing Ting, and the many core disciples of the Crafting Peak. If he encountered any danger, he could escape. He was not afraid of being caught, but what about these people? Although it seemed like he had said some nonsense, he had actually made it clear that no one would be able to make a fuss about this matter in the future. If he was just a hothead who did not know anything and did things on impulse, he would have been eaten alive by this man-eating world. This place is not suitable for you to fight. Go to the star-picking platform. The sect leader and the 3 supreme elders have strengthened it. You can do whatever you want there. Xie Xiaofeng said to the 2. Lin Feng and Juexin Doken nodded without any objections. Their strength had already reached the intermediate stage of the 5th stage of the Earth realm. If they went all out, even an ordinary expert of the 5th stage of the Earth realm wouldn't be their opponent. They were already able to cause a lot of destruction. If they were to fight here, perhaps even the entire Bright Moon House would be affected. Although it wouldn't be completely destroyed, it would still take some effort to recover. Xie Xiaofeng led the way in front with a large group of people following behind. There were disciples from various peaks and the 7 peak masters. It was a mix of good and bad people. After about 10 breaths of time, they arrived at their destination. This is the place. Alright, you can go up yourselves. Xie Xiaofeng stopped and stood with his hands behind his back, looking at the platform in front of him. The star-picking platform was about 300 feet in length and width, and 600 feet in height. It looked extremely majestic and unusually sturdy. Everyone stopped and looked at Lin Feng and Juexin Doken. Juexin Doken did not seem to want to wait a moment longer. The moment he heard Xie Xiaofeng's words, he quickly flew up to the stage and looked down at Lin Feng coldly. Everyone from Weapon Refinery Peak and Jing Ting had worried looks on their faces. They were extremely nervous. Lin Feng was not afraid at all. He smiled faintly and flew up to the high platform. The 2 of them, one in the east and one in the west, looked at each other from afar. Their gazes intersected in midair, colliding and creating intense sparks. Before the battle even started, a thick fighting spirit had already engulfed the star-plucking platform. An invisible smell of gunpowder spread out. Who do you think will live and who will die in this battle? Long Hua asked with a faint smile. Yi Changtian's lips curled into a relaxed smile. Juexin Du Kuan defeated the only late-stage Earth Level 5 core disciple of Alchemy Peak. Although he did not say his answer out loud, his meaning was clear enough. Zhang Lai said straightforwardly, if Lin Feng also has a 5th revolution holy item, the outcome might be debatable. But it's a pity Yen Chao and the rest also expressed their opinions. Although we do not know Lin Feng's abilities yet, from what I see, Lin Feng is more likely to lose than win. Only Xie Xiaofeng did not say anything. His gaze was calm, as if this had nothing to do with him. Behind the various peak leaders, Yan Luo, Huashen, Yun Zhongzi, Jing Ting, Nan Yang, Mo Zhu and the rest all had different expressions. He won't die so easily. Yan Luo, Huashen and Yun Zhongzi all had the same thought. Although they could not find any reason to support this thought, it was probably because Lin Feng was the only youth who had defeated them. In their subconscious, they knew that Lin Feng was not as simple as he looked. Otherwise, he would not have been able to defeat them so easily. Oh yes, we did not come to the weapon refining peak just to watch the battle between Lin Feng and Ljueshin Du Kuan. Zhang Lai suddenly thought of something important. The Third Revolution Holy Armor. We still have not found out who refined the Third Revolution Holy Armor. Yan Chao and the rest then reacted. Oh yes, we almost forgot about this. They looked at Xie Xiaofeng, hoping that he could give them an answer. Xie Xiaofeng was silent for a while. He looked around the crowd and asked Nanyang, "Nanyang, did you guys hear the three thunders just now?" Nanyang was stunned. "Peak leader, don't you know?" "Know what?" Xie Xiaofeng's intuition told him that he seemed to have forgotten something that he would regret for the rest of his life. He felt uneasy. Nanyang took a deep breath and looked at Lin Feng, who was on the stage. He said, "The person who refined the Third Revolution Holy Armor is Lin Feng." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone, including Long Hua, Yi Changtian, and the core disciples around them, such as Yen Luo, Wu Shun, Yun Zhongzi, and the others, were all stunned on the spot. Even Xie Xiaofeng's expression changed drastically. His indifferent expression was instantly replaced by shock. "Is this true?" Xie Xiaofeng suppressed the shock in his heart and asked word by word. Nanyang smiled bitterly. Why would I lie about such an important matter? Moreover, there were many people who saw Junior Lin Feng refining the Third Revolution Holy Armor. Junior sister Mo Zhu, junior sister Bai Yu, junior brother Lu Hu, junior brother Sun Yu, and the rest were all there. Even Lady Jing from the Fair Maiden Peak was there. Everyone saw it with their own eyes. If Peak Leader does not believe me, you can ask them. Hearing this, Xie Xiaofeng swept his gaze towards Mo Zhu and the others. There was no need to say anything. Xie Xiaofeng knew the answer just by looking at their expressions. In an instant, Xie Xiaofeng's heart was filled with regret. I was reckless. His eyes were fixed on Lin Feng on the star-picking platform. A high-tier Earth-grade weapon refiner. This boy is actually a high-tier Earth-grade weapon refiner. He was shocked and regretful. I shouldn't have agreed to his request. No matter how much he trusted Lin Feng and believed that Lin Feng could defeat Ljueshin Duo Kuan, he did not want Lin Feng to take the risk. Even if there was only a little danger, he would not allow Lin Feng, who was a high-tier Earth-grade weapon refiner, to bear it. A high-tier Earth-grade weapon refiner. In millions of years, this was the first high-tier Earth-grade weapon refiner in the weapon refining peak. It had an extraordinary significance to the weapon refining peak. Such a person must not have the slightest mistake. Even if there was only the slightest possibility, it must be eliminated. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Xie Xiaofeng was extremely vexed. On one hand, he was angry at himself. On the other hand, he was angry at these core disciples. If they had told him earlier, how would he have agreed to Lin Feng's request to fight? How would he have allowed Lin Feng to bear that little bit of danger? We all thought that the Peak Masters knew. Nanyang could only smile bitterly. If not, why would all the Peak Masters come together? Mo Zhu also lowered her head deeply, extremely regretful. Seeing all the Peak Masters come together, we thought that you all already knew about this matter. We never thought that you all did not know at all. Xie Xiaofeng looked at the two. He wanted to blame them, but he did not know where to start. He could only sigh bitterly. Foolish! Yen Luo, Huashun, Yun Zhongzi, and the other core disciples of the main peaks, including the 7 Peak Masters, could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Earth-grade high-tier blacksmith, Lin Feng was actually an Earth-grade high-tier blacksmith. This news was like a bolt from the blue, shaking their minds to the point that their heads were buzzing, and their heads were shaken until they were dizzy. After a long while, everyone came back to their senses. The way they looked at Lin Feng had undergone a huge change. Lin Feng not only had extraordinary strength that made the 4 geniuses fear, but his talent in weapon refining was also terrifying. He had reached the realm of a high-tier Earth-grade weapon refiner at a young age. Did it not mean that, if he continued to work hard in the future, it was very likely that he would become a heaven-grade weapon refiner in the future? At the thought of this, their eyes changed again and again. This Lin Feng had hidden too deeply. During the sect assessment, he showed amazing ability to identify talent. When people thought that he was only SOSO, he relied on his deep understanding of the law in the stairway world to defeat the 4 geniuses in one fell swoop and reach the top. Therefore, people's thoughts changed again. They thought that his real strength should be his own strength, not his talent in weapon refining. However, not long after this idea was formed, the explosive news that he had refined the 3rd transformation Saint Armor broke out. It could be said that he had made a magnificent turnaround and suddenly became a high-tier Earth-grade weapon refiner. This sudden change was simply too much for the eyes to take in. The stimulation it brought was wave after wave, as if there was no limit to it. It was not until this moment that they realized that Lin Feng was really unfathomable. Every time people thought that they understood him, he would show amazing ability again, as if there was no limit at all. We did not lose unjustly. Yan Luo sighed deeply. He is not a genius on the same level as us. Perhaps, with his talent, he is enough to compete with the top geniuses of the entire Bloodridge continent. If it was just a little bit, Yan Luo would not be discouraged. However, when the gap was too big, it was like a natural moat. He had no confidence in crossing it in his life, and he no longer had the confidence to compete. Even Yan Luo felt inferior. One could imagine how Wu Xin and Yun Zhongzi felt. Is he a genius earth cultivator or a genius weapon refiner? Yun Zhongzi murmured slowly. The rest of the core disciples smacked their lips. They wanted to say something, but they did not know where to start. This was because they did not know how to evaluate Lin Feng. They could only say that they had never seen Lin Feng clearly. The Lin Feng they knew had always been the most superficial and superficial side. Whether he wins or loses today's battle, the title of the number 1 core disciple of the Shuntian sect for thousands of years belongs to him. Many core disciples had this thought in their minds. Chapter 483. Blacksmiths, alchemists, array masters, and other professions were all divided into 3 levels: heaven, earth, and human. Human level corresponded to earth 1st layer to earth 3rd layer, earth level corresponded to earth 4th layer to earth 6th layer, and heaven level corresponded to earth 7th layer to earth 9th layer. In other words, early-stage human level was equivalent to Earth 1st layer powerhouses, middle-stage human level was equivalent to Earth 2nd layer powerhouses, and so on. High-stage heaven level was equivalent to Earth 9th layer powerhouses. However, due to the scarcity of blacksmiths and the difficulty of leveling up was much higher than other professions, the status of blacksmiths was higher than other professions. For example, early-stage human-level blacksmiths were theoretically equivalent to Earth 1st layer powerhouses, but in reality, they were higher than Earth 1st layer powerhouses and lower than Earth 2nd layer powerhouses. High-stage Earth-level blacksmiths were equivalent to Earth 6th layer powerhouses. In other words, high-stage Earth-level blacksmiths were between Earth 6th layer powerhouses and Earth 7th layer powerhouses, higher than the former and lower than the latter. It was precisely because of this that everyone was shocked to the extreme by this sudden news. After all, Lin Feng was only a core disciple and had only been in the sect for 10 years. In just 10 years, Lin Feng's status had risen above the 10 peak masters and many core disciples, even above the 7 true disciples, and was only second to the sect leader and the 3 grand elders. This kind of thing was hard for everyone to accept in a short time. It could be said that Lin Feng's story was more miraculous than a heavenly book. This was simply a miracle that was difficult to replicate. High-stage Earth-level blacksmiths. Yi Chong Tian's eyes flashed with a touch of coldness. No matter what, we must not let him continue to grow. He and Lin Feng had already had a conflict, and this conflict was not small. If he let Lin Feng continue to grow, in his opinion, he would lose his life sooner or later. His face was gloomy and uncertain, and finally he made up his mind. Even if the sect leader will punish me, we must not let this kid go. Yi Chong Tian was undoubtedly the representative of this kind of person who measured the heart of a gentleman with the heart of a villain. As long as he thought about the possibility of such a thing happening in the future, he could not sit still and vowed to nip all threats in the bud. Now, he believed that he still had the ability to subdue Lin Feng, but in a few more days, with Lin Feng's speed of growth, he was afraid that he would no longer have the opportunity to kill Lin Feng. Long Hua, Yen Chao, and the others also looked at the calm figure on the star-plucking platform with a dangerous light in their eyes. Lin Feng's rise had made them feel that their status as the main peak was under threat. Not to mention that the other main peaks had always oppressed the weapon refining peak. Although they were not at the point of being incompatible, there were many conflicts between them. Once the weapon refining peak rose, the other main peaks would be threatened and their status would fall. If the weapon refining peak were to make things difficult for them, they would be in trouble. This Lin Feng can't be left alive. This thought flashed through Long Hua's mind. But then he frowned. No, now that he has shown such terrifying talent, we can't do anything to him, or the sect leader will punish us heavily. They were not Yi Chong Tian, and there were no obvious conflicts between them and Lin Feng. Therefore, they were not as determined as Yi Chong Tian to get rid of Lin Feng. Let's see how it goes. If there is a chance, I don't mind getting rid of Lin Feng, but I can't leave any evidence behind. At this time, they were suddenly looking forward to the battle between Lin Feng and Juexin Du Kuan. If Juexin Du Kuan could kill Lin Feng in a battle of life and death, that would be the best. However, they no longer had the same confidence in Juexin Du Kuan as before. Since Lin Feng had hidden so deeply, who knew if he had hidden most of his strength? For a moment they could not help but laugh bitterly. This Lin Feng is really a tough nut to crack. They were a little glad that they did not offend Lin Feng so easily. Otherwise, they would be the ones who would be anxious and not Yi Chong Tian. His potential is limitless. Maybe he really has a way to subdue the heart of earthly fire. Xie Xiaofeng looked at Lin Feng calmly. No one could guess what he was thinking. No matter what, we have to ensure his safety. If he wins, then so be it. If he loses, even if we have to break the rules of the battle of life and death and go against our oath, we can't let him get hurt. On the star-plucking platform, Lin Feng did not know that the news of him refining the Third Revolution Saint armor had been leaked. He also did not know about the plans of the Peak Masters and the complicated feelings of the many core disciples. He looked at Juexin Du Kuan indifferently and could not help but feel pity for him. Was it worth it for a good genius to lose his life over such a small matter? Yet, Juexin still thought that he had no power to fight back. It was as if he was certain that he could defeat him. He really did not know where Juexin's confidence came from. Lin Feng, do you still remember the scene during the sect assessment when Alchemy Peak's Elder Lin Hang and Weapon Refining Peak's Elder Horn fought over you? Do you know how I felt at that time? What did you think of me, the #1 genius of Alchemy Peak? Juexin Du Kuan did not seem to be in a hurry to kill Lin Feng. He spoke slowly as if he wanted to vent the negative emotions in his heart. Do you still remember how glorious you were in the stairway world? The Peak Masters did not hesitate to pay a huge price for you? Even the Peak Master of Alchemy Peak promised you a 5th Revolution Saint weapon. Do you know how I felt at that moment? Did you ever think that this day would come? Lin Feng looked at him quietly. He would treat it as giving this genius the last bit of respect and letting him shine for the last time. I, Ljueshin Du Kuan, am one of the 4 geniuses of Shuntian Prefecture. I should be the center of attention like the stars surrounding the moon. However, because of you, I became a joke in everyone's eyes. To me, this is a huge humiliation. A humiliation that can only be washed away with blood. Ljueshin Du Kuan seemed to have gone mad. He was extremely emotional. Do you know how much I suffered in order to become stronger? Everything is because of you. If not for you, I would not have suffered so much. I would not have become a joke in everyone's eyes. I would not have suffered so much humiliation. He took a deep breath and pulled out the tiger's soul saber. He pointed it at Lin Feng and said, "Today, I will use this tiger's soul saber that almost fell into your hands to end your life and wash away my humiliation." As he spoke, his aura became more and more turbulent. It was like a huge wave, and his battle intent soared to the sky. After saying so much, in the end, it only proves that you are narrow-minded. Lin Feng could not help but shake his head. However, he was too lazy to explain. Since it was a battle of life and death, then there was only life and death. There was no reason. He just looked at Ljueshin Du Kuan. An ethereal aura seeped out of his body and blocked Ljueshin Du Kuan's aura. One was as violent as fire and lightning. The other was as light as a breeze and flowing water. However, no matter how strong Ljueshin Du Kuan's aura was or how shocking his battle intent was, it could not shake Lin Feng at all. The latter did not move at all and was not affected at all. In terms of aura alone, Lin Feng was not at a disadvantage at all. The spectators felt the aura that occasionally leaked out and had a new understanding of Lin Feng's strength. Middle Stage Earth Stage 5. Like Ljueshin Du Kuan, Lin Feng's strength had reached Middle Stage Earth Stage 5. This was shocking news. "Where is your weapon?" Ljueshin Du Kuan stared at Lin Feng. Lin Feng said calmly, "You are not qualified to force me to use my weapon." Of course, in reality, he did not have a weapon that suited him at the moment because his strength had grown too quickly and he had changed weapons too frequently. He might as well fight empty-handed for now and wait for the right time to refine a weapon for himself. However, only Huang Wenbing, Jing Ting, and Nono knew about this. Others only thought that he was too arrogant. Lin Feng is too arrogant. Many people could not help but shake their heads secretly. "How dare you look down on me? If you have the guts, don't use your weapon later." Aurora. Ljueshin Du Kuan's pride was hurt again. He was almost driven mad by Lin Feng. In his rage, he suddenly moved. The moment he attacked, it was an extremely powerful attack. It was a lower middle-level law technique. Everyone on Weapon Refining Peak held their breath. They were extremely nervous. The rest also looked at Lin Feng without blinking. The air seemed to have frozen. Time stopped at this moment. It was a moment, but it felt like an eternity. Countercurrent. Lin Feng shouted in his heart and turned into a shadow. Rumble. The sword light that was so fast that it made people's hearts palpitate seemed to have pierced through layers of space and reached Lin Feng directly. However, it missed and lost its target. The sword light landed on the ground, causing the star-picking platform to tremble slightly. The deafening sound made everyone's expression change. Even Yen Luo, Huashen, and Yun Zhongzi became serious. They looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. It was the first time that most people here saw Ljueshin Du Kuan show his true strength. It was only now that they knew how strong Ljueshin Du Kuan was. The strength and speed of the attack just now were probably comparable to that of a late-stage Earth Stage 5 expert. And this was not Ljueshin Du Kuan's limit. Could it be that Yi Changtian is so confident in him? Everyone thought. Lin Feng is probably in danger. However, they only saw Yi Changtian's strength. They did not see Lin Feng's ease. The movement technique formed by the combination of time and space laws was already extremely terrifying. It could be ranked in the upper echelons of high-level movement technique. When such a terrifying nomological skill was integrated with the law of amplitude, its effect was greatly enhanced and even more terrifying. It would be difficult to find any other movement nomological skill in the world that could be compared to it. Aurora. El Jueshin Du Kuan raised the Tiger Soul sword and calmly launched a second attack. Countercurrent. Lin Feng used countercurrent again. His figure flashed and dodged the Aurora. The next moment, he appeared in front of El Jueshin Du Kuan. On the surface, it looked like Lin Feng had been dodging and was suppressed to the point that he could not resist at all. Blade Storm. El Jueshin Du Kuan did not panic. The moment Lin Feng appeared, a cruel sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, he held the sword with both hands and slashed horizontally. A storm immediately swept up in the surroundings. Countless sword lights formed in an instant and scattered in the terrifying storm. Even the star-picking platform trembled. This was his trump card. A nomological skill that was comprehended by the fusion of the three great laws of speed, light, and explosion. It was a nomological skill that he had painstakingly obtained from an ancient site. It was a nomological skill that was suitable for him in the upper echelons of high-level movement technique. When this move was used, even a late-stage Earth Stage 5 expert would be almost invincible. Everyone's gaze was attracted by this terrifying power. Oh no, Lin Feng is in danger. Almost everyone's nerves were tense and their eyes were wide open. From the beginning, this battle had been one-sided. However, no one could tell that the one who was truly invincible was not El Jueshin Du Kuan, but Lin Feng, who they thought would definitely die. I've made it up to you for letting you perform for so long. Lin Feng's lips curled into a smile. The battle is about to end. Chapter 484. Everyone knew that Lin Feng had hidden his strength well, but they did not expect Earl Jueshin to be so powerful. Duo Kuan had also hidden his strength so well. If the Aurora could threaten a late-stage Earth Stage 5 expert, then the Blade Storm could instantly kill a late-stage Earth Stage 5 expert. Even the Peak Masters, who were almost invincible in the late-stage Earth Stage 5 expert, had to be careful when facing it. Otherwise, they might die if they were careless. The Blade Storm contained all the advantages of the Aurora and maximized them. It covered a wider area, had a larger attack range, was faster, and had shocking power. Even if Lin Feng could dodge it, it would be difficult for him to remain unharmed. Xie Xiaofeng clenched his fists, and his eyes flashed. He was ready to save Lin Feng at any time. Although the weapon refining peak had always been at the bottom of the 10 main peaks, Xie Xiaofeng's strength was above the other 9 peak masters. Ever since he started cultivating, he had never lost to anyone of the same level. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the strongest person under the Earth Stage 6 in Shuntian Prefecture. The reason why he did not make a move immediately was because he still had a trace of confidence in Lin Feng. In the entire crafting peak, only he knew that Lin Feng had most likely taken the blood vein elixir, and his physical strength had reached the early stage of Earth Tier 5. Coupled with the third transformation holy armor that Lin Feng had made himself, there was a high chance that he could block El Jueshin's attack. Duo Kuan's earth-shattering attack. However, this was only his own guess. He could not be sure if Lin Feng had consumed the blood vein elixir. Hence, he could only be prepared to save Lin Feng at any time. Once Lin Feng was in danger, he would save Lin Feng. Ha ha ha. Die Lin Feng. Earl Jueshin? Duo Kuan laughed wildly. Lin Feng's lips curled into a mocking smile. The game ends here. I'll use you to test if the power of my law technique has reached my expectations. He glanced at Lin Feng's mocking smile. Earl Jueshin? Duo Kuan suddenly had a bad premonition. Xie Xiaofeng, on the other hand, smiled in relief. He has indeed eaten the blood-patterned fruit. Earth's fury. Lin Feng completely ignored the surrounding blades that were enough to kill a late-stage, Stage 5 expert. He clenched his fist and punched out. It was an ordinary and simple punch, but it contained 3 of the 7 strongest laws. This punch carried the will of the heavens and earth, and it carried the power of 1,000 caddies as it landed on El Jueshin. Duo Kuan's abdomen. Bang! Eljazin? Duo Kuan's arrogant smile suddenly turned purple, and he was sent flying, spitting out blood. Ding, ding, ding! Only then did the dense crisscrossing blades hit Linfeng's body, and the sound of metal and stone colliding could be heard. Sparks flew out from Linfeng's body. His body trembled slightly, and then there was no more reaction. With just Earth's fury, I can travel the world. Linfeng's heroic spirit soared, and he became more confident. The power of Earth's fury isn't any weaker than the full-powered attack of a late-stage, Stage 5 expert. The power of Heaven's fury is even stronger than Earth's fury, and I'm afraid it has already reached the limit of late-stage, Stage 5, or even surpassed it. It's comparable to an early-stage, Stage 6 expert's casual attack. If I use Heaven's fury and Earth's fury in the state of reverse flow, their power can be increased. Even if he didn't have a weapon, an early-stage, Stage 6 expert would have to pay a huge price to defeat him. If he had a suitable weapon and was careful, even an early-stage, Stage 6 expert might not be able to do anything to him. Pft el ju xin? Duo Kuan fell to the edge of the star-plucking platform and spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Lin Feng in horror. Everyone nearby was flabbergasted. The plot had reversed too quickly. Originally, Earl had thought it was new? Duo Kuan was suppressing Lin Feng, but suddenly, Lin Feng made a beautiful turn and defeated Eljazin with a single move. Duo Kuan was heavily injured, while Lin Feng himself was unharmed after taking that earth-shattering blow. Lin Feng's strength was shocking. Yan Luo, Wu Shen, and the others accepted this fact more easily than the others. As expected, he hid his strength, and he hid it even more. So strong. The core disciples of the crafting peak opened their eyes wide, and they were deeply shocked by the scene in front of them. After the shock, there were excited cheers, and pride that came from the bottom of their hearts. From today onwards, the crafting peak had a peerless genius, and he wasn't inferior to any of the other main peaks. From today onwards, the core disciples of the crafting peak would be on equal footing with the other main peaks, and they would no longer be bullied by the other main peak. On the contrary, it would be good if they didn't bully the other main peak. Nanyang, Mo Zhu, and the others were so excited that they almost cried. Great, great. They repeated these 3 words, and words couldn't express the excitement in their hearts. Jingting, on the other hand, had a proud smile on her face. The greater Linfeng's achievements were, the more respected and valued he was, and the prouder she felt. Perhaps to Lin Feng she was only a part of his life, but to her, Lin Feng was her everything. Xie Xiaofeng, what exactly did you feed Lin Feng? Why is his physical body so strong? Yi Changtian was so angry that he almost fainted. He asked furiously, although the 3rd Revolution Saint armor is powerful, it can't allow Lin Feng to withstand El Jueshin's attack unharmed. Duo Kuan's attack. Long Hua, Zhang Lai, Yen Chao, and the others all looked at Xie Xiaofeng. They were also very curious about this question. Xie Xiaofeng said calmly, "Nothing else, the blood-patterned fruit." Blood-patterned fruit. Yi Changtian looked at Xie Xiaofeng in shock. Don't you know how violent the energy of that thing is? Other than those who are nearing the end of their lifespan or have exhausted their potential, who would consume the blood-patterned fruit and suffer extreme pain. Aren't you afraid that Lin Feng won't be able to withstand it and will go crazy? Xie Xiaofeng closed his eyes and kept quiet for a while. He then said, didn't he withstand it? Moreover, if he really can't withstand it, it only proves that he has not met my requirements and is not qualified to shoulder the responsibility of the future of the blacksmith peak. Although he said that, if he knew that Lin Feng could forge the third Revolution Saint armor and was an Earth-class high-tier blacksmith, he would not have given the blood-patterned elixir to Lin Feng. Now that he thought about it, he was still afraid. Fortunately, nothing happened to Lin Feng. Otherwise, he would become the sinner of the blacksmith peak. Yi Changtian was speechless. However, it was impossible for him to sit still and wait for death. He secretly sent a message to Long Hua. Brother Long, how about we make a deal? Long Hua's face showed a trace of surprise, but he did not say anything. He was very curious. Why did Yi Changtian want to make a deal with him at this time? I know that Brother Long has a golden body elixir. I hope Brother Long can bear the pain and give it to me. Yi Changtian said bluntly. I am willing to use a 5th Revolution Saint weapon to exchange with Brother Long, unless it was a last resort. He would not personally make a move. After all, although the sect leader would not kill him, the punishment would not be too light. 5th Revolution Saint weapon. Long Hua muttered. I do have the golden body elixir. This is something everyone knows. In theory, a 5th Revolution Saint weapon is equivalent to the golden body elixir. However, if I exchange with Brother Yi now, I will have to bear a lot of pressure and even bear Xie Xiaofeng's anger and the sect leader's punishment. So, please forgive me. Now was the best time to fight for his own benefit. How could he give up? Yi Changtian was so angry that he cursed Long Hua countless times in his heart. However, he had to lower his head. The golden body elixir is Ljuxin? It is Duo Kuan's only chance to make a comeback. I hope Brother Long can fulfill it. He made a gesture, but his heart was bleeding. Obviously, he also knew that this transaction would not work without some blood. Long Hua smiled faintly. I heard that Brother Yi once obtained a drop of true dragon blood. Yi Changtian's eyes widened. He did not wait for Long Hua to finish and refused. No, absolutely not. Brother Yi, there's no need to be in such a hurry. A trade is a matter of mutual consent. Since Brother Yi isn't willing, then just pretend I didn't say anything. Long Hua wasn't angry at all and continued to smile. Yi Changtian furrowed his brows and said, You can have anything you want except for the true dragon's blood. Long Hua did not let go. But I am only interested in the true dragon blood. I don't care about anything else. Yi Changtian was so angry that he could not speak. Looking at Ljuxin on the star-plucking platform, Duo Kuan was sent flying again by Lin Feng. His breathing was getting weaker and weaker, and he could be killed by Lin Feng at any time. Even with the support of top-grade faith crystals, Duo Kuan's recovery speed was far slower than Lin Feng's attack speed. As the saying went, before the old injuries healed, new injuries were added. Ljuxin? Duo Kuan was in danger. Yi Changtian's expression was hesitant and indeterminate, and his breathing became heavier. He'd already hated Lin Feng to the bone, and if it wasn't for everyone present here, he would have probably flown up the star-plucking platform and killed Lin Feng with a single strike. At this time, Long Hua added fuel to the fire. Brother Yi, it's best if you make a plan early. In my opinion, Ljuxin? At most, Duo Kuan can last 10 breaths before his saint godhead shatters, and he dies. Sigh, it's a pity that such a genius appeared in Gold Refinement Peak. Those who did not know might really think that Yi Changtian was thinking for Gold Refinement Peak. Forget it, I promise you. Yi Changtian let out a long sigh. Look carefully, this is true dragon's blood. Long Hua caught the small emerald bottle thrown by Yi Changtian, and a trace of excitement flashed in his eyes. Where's the golden body pill? Quickly give it to me. Yi Changtian urged. Here, this is the golden body pill. Long Hua did not go back on his words, and threw the golden body pill to Yi Changtian. Other than that, there's also a holy pill to restore your saint godhead, essence pill. After taking it, your injuries will be healed in 3 breaths. Consider it a gift for this transaction. Although the essence pill was not part of the transaction, Long Hua had the same plan as Yi Changtian. What if he could borrow Eljuashin? He was more than willing to kill Lin Feng with Duo Kuan's help. After receiving the golden body pill and essence pill, Yi Changtian did not say anything. Eljuashin? Duo Kuan was in a precarious situation, and he did not dare to delay any longer. Eljuashin? Duo Kuan, go to the east side of the star-picking platform and wait for me there. He sent a voice transmission to Duo Kuan. Eljuashin, who had been sent flying again by Lin Feng's punch. Duo Kuan's eyes lit up with joy. He knew that Yi Changtian must have seen that he was not Lin Feng's opponent, and had deliberately found a treasure to help him win. Since it was Yi Changtian who had made the move, he naturally had great confidence. Otherwise, he would not waste a treasure on him at this time. Without any hesitation, Duo Kuan's figure retreated. Chapter 485. Lin Feng's eyes were sharp. He saw that Eljuashin was flying towards him. The trajectory of Duo Kuan's attack was not right, so he immediately paid attention to his surroundings. As soon as he paid attention, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. 2 small, translucent jade bottles were silently flying towards the edge of the star-picking platform. The direction they were flying towards was none other than Eljuashin. They were flying towards Duo Kuan's direction. If Lin Feng had not noticed Eljuashin, Duo Kuan would not have noticed it. There was something wrong with Duo Kuan. He probably wouldn't have been able to discover the existence of these 2 jade bottles. Lin Feng's gaze silently swept towards Yi Changtian in the distance, and a trace of rage couldn't help but arise in his heart. This old geezer really didn't exceed my expectations. Even if he swore an oath, he still secretly interfered in the life and death battle. He sneered in his heart, however, since I've discovered it, this thing naturally belongs to me. If this old man finds out that everything he's done has ended up benefiting someone else, I wonder how he'll feel. Lin Feng respected the old and loved the young. However, this old did not include people like Yi Changtian. In an instant, many thoughts flashed through Lin Feng's mind. However, he remained calm and pretended that he did not know anything. Duo Kuan chased after him. Eljuashin? Duo Kuan's panicked expression disappeared and was replaced with hatred and a sneer. Eljuashin? Duo Kuan was sneering, so was Lin Feng. It was unknown who would have the last laugh. Close. Eljuashin? The joy in Duo Kuan's eyes grew. He could almost see the scene of Lin Feng being killed by him. He could not help but be intoxicated. 10 feet, 10 feet, 10 feet, 3 feet, 2 feet, 1 foot, seeing that the 2 small jade bottles were almost within reach and were about to fall into his hands. Eljuashin? Duo Kuan finally could not help but smile. Yi Changtian heaved a sigh of relief and glanced at Xie Xiaofeng. Seeing that Xie Xiaofeng did not notice anything, he revealed a satisfied smile. This time, this kid will definitely die. Although he had paid a huge price and still felt the pinch, as long as he could kill Lin Feng, he felt that everything was worth it. However, unforeseen events often happened in an instant. You're going to die soon. Consuming them will only be a waste of resources. Why don't you give them to me and let them display their value? A mocking voice rang out in Eljuashin's ear. The voice rang in Duo Kuan's ears. Eljazin? Duo Kuan's expression suddenly changed. He suddenly sped up and reached out to grab the two small jade bottles. However, he was one step too late because when Lin Feng spoke, he had already used countercurrent. In El Jueshin, when Duo Kuan reached out, he had already scooped up the two small jade bottles, causing Duo Kuan's outstretched hand to grab nothing. No! Seeing his things being snatched away, El Jueshin cried out. Duo Kuan's last shred of hope was instantly extinguished. He roared in despair, "Blade storm!" In that instant, in despair, El Jueshin? Duo Kuan exploded crazily, almost forcing out all of his life's potential. His aura also rose steadily. The terrifying attack that had already caused the star-picking platform to tremble was now even more terrifying. It caused the entire star-picking platform to tremble slightly. Crisscrossing blades formed a sealed storm space. Every blade had the attacking power of a late-stage Earth Stage 5. When tens of thousands of blades were combined, it was probably enough to threaten a early-stage Earth Stage 6 expert. He had broken through. In extreme despair and anger, El Jueshin? Duo Kuan's strength had actually broken through to late-stage Earth Stage 5. With the power of the Tiger Soul Blade and the terrifying Blade Storm, he was able to unleash such a shocking attack. If his previous attack could be described as earth-shattering, it was a little unrealistic. Now, he was really qualified to be called earth-shattering. Go and die. His strength had broken through. El Jueshin? Duo Kuan's confidence instantly recovered. The threat that Lin Feng brought also disappeared without a trace in an instant. Tens of thousands of blades spun non-stop, following El Jueshin. With Duo Kuan's angry roar, the densely packed blades that covered the sky instantly changed their direction and surrounded Lin Feng in the middle. They pierced towards Lin Feng at an unbelievable speed. His front, back, left, and right were all blocked. Lin Feng had no other choice but to face it head-on. When Yi Changtian saw that Lin Feng had snatched away the golden body elixir and essence elixir, he was extremely angry and was about to explode. However, El Jueshin's sudden outburst made him stop. His angry expression was immediately replaced by surprise. Although he had lost the golden body elixir and essence elixir, El Jueshin? Duo Kuan was able to rely on himself to break through his current realm and increase his strength greatly. Naturally, it was far more powerful than the help of elixirs. Moreover, El Jueshin, who was late-stage Earth Stage 5, Duo Kuan definitely had the strength to kill Lin Feng easily. This kid really didn't disappoint me. A satisfied smile appeared on Yi Changtian's face. With the power of this move, even if that Lin Feng had consumed the blood vein fruit, he would still die without a doubt. The current El Jueshin? Duo Kuan was the one who had truly gained his recognition. Furthermore, Duo Kuan's strength was truly close to that of the 10 Peak Masters. Cries of surprise rang out from the surroundings. The core disciples of the various peaks were deeply attracted by the exciting battle in front of them. This battle could be said to be full of twists and turns. First, it was El Jueshin. Duo Kuan forcefully suppressed Lin Feng, revealing the strength of a late-stage Earth Stage 5. Then, Lin Feng easily neutralized his attacks and even countered them, causing Duo Kuan to continuously retreat with heavy injuries. Who would have thought that the life-and-death battle would be over? Who would have thought that El Jueshin? Duo Kuan actually broke through at the crucial moment, causing his strength to undergo an earth-shattering change. As a result, Lin Feng was the one who was in danger. Such an exciting battle had not been seen in the Shuntian sect for many years. It was no wonder that everyone was so excited. Yan Luo, Wu Shen, and Yun Zhongzi's expressions changed. He actually broke through at this moment. I'm afraid that Lin Feng is really in danger. El Jueshin? Duo Kuan's current strength is probably even stronger than the few of us. Although they were unwilling to admit it, the truth could not be changed. Eljueshin, who was not at the bottom among them, had absolutely no advantage at all? Duo Kuen's current strength had already pulled a distance away from them. The cheers of the core disciples of the crafting peak suddenly stopped. What replaced it was despair and unwillingness. Could it be that the crafting peak would never be able to rise again? Even the only genius that could lead the crafting peak to a new height was about to be killed. What hope did they have for the future? Lin Feng, if you die, the entire crafting peak will be buried with you. Jing Ting's gentle eyes were filled with killing intent. This caused the few fair maiden peak disciples beside her to feel an inexplicable chill, as if they were in an ice cellar. It was a long story, but in reality, everything happened in the blink of an eye. Although countercurrent was powerful, it could not directly pass through the layers of attacks and avoid all dangers. Faced with such a situation, Lin Feng only had one choice. That was to meet attack with attack and resolve the crisis. Although the blade storm was extremely powerful, Lin Feng still had absolute confidence that he could defeat it. Countercurrent. Earth's Wrath. Combination technique, strengthened version of Earth's Wrath. At this moment, he had no choice but to reveal a little of his trump card. The combination of countercurrent and Earth's Wrath formed a brand new special law technique. Its power was more than 10 times stronger. Its ultimate power was only a little weaker than Heaven's Wrath. Rumble. The dazzling blades blocked everyone's line of sight. Everyone could only hear a series of explosions, causing the star-picking platform to shake uncontrollably. Terrifying auras spread out. Although they didn't carry the slightest bit of power, they still caused the surrounding core disciples to tremble with fear. With such power, even a trace of the aftershock of the battle could easily kill them. The power of the battle could be imagined. It did not seem like a battle between two core disciples, but more like a battle between two peak masters. After a few breaths, the blades disappeared, and the scene on the star-picking platform once again entered everyone's vision. On the star-picking platform, Lin Feng's clothes were torn with dozens of large and small holes. His hair was messy, and the back of his hand was badly mutilated. Fresh blood flowed down his fingertips, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Although he was in a sorry state, it did not hurt his foundation. It was just some external injuries. However, compared to Lin Feng Erljueshin, Duo Kun was even worse. At this moment, Erljueshin? Duo Kun was completely covered in blood. His chest was caved in, and his sternum could be seen. His breath was weak, and his vitality was like a flame in the wind, about to be extinguished at any time. Facing such a terrifying blade storm, Lin Feng only suffered some superficial wounds. As for Erljueshin, Duo Kun was almost beaten to the point of death. You hid so well, Erljueshin? Duo Kun stuttered. That strand of vitality supported him to finish the last sentence, and then it disappeared completely. One of the 4 geniuses of Shuntian Prefecture, the #1 core disciple of the gold refining peak, had fallen. The entire star-picking platform was dead silent. They had thought of countless outcomes, but they did not expect it to be like this. Erljueshin, who had broken through to the later stage of Earth Stage 5. Duo Kun, who had still died in the hands of Lin Feng. The smile on Yi Changtian's face froze. Long Hua, Zhang Lai, and the rest were shocked. There was even a trace of fear. Xie Xiaofeng also looked at Lin Feng in shock. He was speechless. The core disciples of the weapon refining peak did not know what to do. The surprise came too quickly, and they were not prepared. Their minds were blank. No one knew how Lin Feng did it, but the result was in front of them. No one could change it. Although I suffered some light injuries, I got 2 treasures. It was worth it. Lin Feng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at Yi Changtian. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he revealed a meaningful smile. Old man, now you should know what it feels like to suffer a double loss, right? Chapter 486. If he wanted to deal with Lin Feng, he had to be prepared to die. Earl Jueshin Doken wanted to kill Lin Feng, so he died. If Yi Changtian wanted to kill Lin Feng, then he would have to die sooner or later. While everyone was shocked by the outcome of the life and death duel, Yi Changtian was the first to recover from his shock. Lin Feng, how dare you kill your fellow disciples so cruelly? You even stole the item that I gave to Earl Jueshin Doken. I can't let such a vicious person live. When Yi Changtian spoke, he had already swept past. His figure turned into a series of neatly arranged afterimages. It was an illusion formed by extreme speed. It was a kind of visual illusion. Clang! Before everyone could react, he had already arrived in front of Lin Feng and pulled out the long saber at his waist. Due to the extreme speed at which he pulled out the saber made a soft sound. Saber drawing technique. As soon as the long saber was unsheathed, it was an earth-shattering killing blow. The so-called saber drawing technique was to pull out the saber and attack. When the saber was unsheathed, the enemy would fall. Yi Changtian's strength was only at the late stage of Earth Stage 5. However, the difference was that he had lived for more than 100 million years. His combat experience was extremely condensed, and he had researched all kinds of strange techniques to improve his strength. For these old monsters who had lived for more than 100 million years but had no hope of advancing in their lifetime, they would do everything they could to improve even a little bit of their strength. They would either improve their physical strength, increase their mental strength, or find more tyrannical law techniques, secret techniques, and so on. They would dig out their potential to the extreme and push their strength to the limit. Therefore, although he was only at the late stage of Earth Stage 5, an early stage Earth Stage 6 expert might not be able to kill him. Yi Changtian wasn't the most powerful expert of the late 5th stage of the Earth realm, but he was very close to that level. He had the physical strength of the late 5th stage of the Earth realm, the strength of the late 5th stage of the Earth realm, the vast spiritual power of the sea, and the superb combat skills. When all of these were gathered in one person's body, coupled with the terrifying technique of law, the combat strength displayed would be incomparably terrifying. Yi Changtian didn't use a technique of laws in this attack because there was too little time. It was too late to use a technique of laws. However, the power of this blade was still extremely terrifying. Its destructive power might not be as strong as El Jueshin Du Kuan's blade storm, but its speed was faster and the angle was more tricky. When the blade was unsheathed, it contained infinite changes and sealed off every direction. No matter where Lin Feng escaped, he would have to face this blade. Although they were all Earth Stage 5 experts, the 10 Peak Masters were much stronger than any of the core disciples. Everything happened so quickly that no one had the time to speak. They could only watch as the saber that carried the aura of destruction got closer and closer to Lin Feng. A sacred artifact of the 6th transformation. This was Yi Changtian's most precious trump card, his most treasured item. In the past, he would never show it to others easily and kept it hidden. But now, in order to kill Lin Feng, he couldn't care less about revealing the sacred artifact of the 6th transformation. Space froze and time froze. That moment felt as long as 10,000 years. Countercurrent. Wrath of the Earth. In terms of combat experience, Lin Feng might not be as good as Yi Changtian, but his combat awareness was extremely strong. In addition, Lin Feng had been vigilant against Yi Changtian. As soon as he saw Yi Changtian make a move, he responded immediately. He wasn't caught off guard by Yi Changtian's sudden attack. The powerful combination skill reappeared. Rumble, the star-picking platform, had withstood many attacks and was no longer as stable as it was in the beginning. Now, it was shaking as if it was going to collapse at any time. In an instant, the figures of Lin Feng and Yi Changtian confronting each other entered everyone's sight. However, the terrifying power of the explosion caused by the momentary confrontation pushed the two of them apart. Yi Chang Tian only took a dozen steps back, but Lin Feng flew out of the range of the star-picking platform and fell down. Lin Feng. Junior brother Lin. It was only then that the core disciples of the crafting peak, Jing Ting, and the others had time to exclaim and rush toward Lin Feng, who had fallen down from the star-picking platform. Yi Chang Tian, what are you doing? Xie Xiaofeng's furious roar was deafening. He stood between Lin Feng and Yi Chang Tian, not giving Yi Chang Tian a chance to attack. He stared coldly at Yi Chang Tian as if he would attack at any moment. I need an explanation. If this explanation didn't satisfy him, he wouldn't mind teaching Yi Chang Tian a lesson. In terms of strength, he was stronger than Yi Chang Tian. In terms of weapons, he also had a sixth transformation sacred artifact. If they were to fight, Yi Chang Tian would be no match for him. The rest of the core disciples of the main peak, as well as Long Hua and the other peak masters, were shocked. They vaguely recalled the scene before the life-and-death duel when Lin Feng kept nagging and insisting the peak masters to swear an oath. Not long ago, they had thought that Lin Feng's action was superfluous and a waste of time. Yi Chang Tian was a hero, so how could he attack Lin Feng? They didn't think that Lin Feng was qualified to force Yi Chang Tian to attack him. They even secretly laughed at Lin Feng, thinking that Lin Feng was deliberately mystifying to buy time to escape from the life-and-death duel because he was afraid of the life-and-death duel. However, they didn't expect that everything Lin Feng said would actually happen. Yi Chang Tian actually attacked Lin Feng. Moreover, he chose to attack when Lin Feng had just killed El Juexin Du Kuan and had yet to recover from his injuries. It could be said that Yi Chang Tian was taking advantage of Yi Chang Tian's weakness. He fully displayed his vicious and fearless character. For a moment, the corners of their mouths curled into a mocking smile. Didn't he swear that he wouldn't take the opportunity to attack Lin Feng? The dignified peak master of Alchemy Peak actually treated his oath as nonsense. He broke it less than 15 minutes after making the oath. No wonder Lin Feng said those words earlier. I misunderstood Lin Feng before. Now it seems that Lin Feng is too prescient. How did he guess that Yi Chang Tian would take the opportunity to attack him? However, I'm afraid that Lin Feng didn't expect that Yi Chang Tian would attack him after being forced to swear an oath. I've learned something new. It's really hard to find someone as shameless as Yi Chang Tian in this world. At first, the crowd would respectfully address Yi Chang Tian as Peak Master Yi Chang Tian. Later on, they simply called him by his name. In their opinion, a shameless person like Yi Chang Tian was not qualified to be a peak master at all. A peak master should be a person of virtue and prestige with good character. Yi Chang Tian was strong enough, but when it came to moral character, it was debatable. The disciples of Alchemy Peak lowered their heads deeply. They felt the disdainful gazes around them and wished that they could dig a hole in the ground. They were too ashamed to face anyone. Not only did Yi Chang Tian lose his own face, but he also lost the face of Gold Refinement Peak. His behavior made everyone wonder if all the people in Gold Refinement Peak would become as shameless as him under his leadership. Although they lowered their heads and did not dare to look at the people around them, they could not cover their ears. The words of disdain and mockery around them were so harsh that they had the urge to leave Alchemy Peak immediately. Otherwise, they did not know how long they could hold on. They did not know when they would be angered to the point of vomiting blood. Shame. They felt endless shame for having such a peak master in Alchemy Peak. Damn it, if I had to choose again, I wouldn't choose Alchemy Peak even if I was beaten to death. For the first time, many core disciples of Alchemy Peak felt a strong sense of regret. Even if they chose Alchemy Peak, which had declined for millions of years, they could not choose Alchemy Peak where Yi Chang Tian was. They could not afford to lose face like that. At least, compared to Yi Chong Tian, Xie Xiaofeng was famous for being an upright gentleman. His words and actions were consistent with his actions, and he was a man of his words. Cough, cough. Lin Feng coughed out a stream of blood from the corner of his mouth, and slowly stood up. Jing Ting, Nanyang, Emoju, Lu Hu, Sun Yu, and the others had just approached. Before they could speak, he waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine. I already expected that old man Yi Chong Tian would attack me, so I made preparations in advance." As he spoke, a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. As I expected, this shameless old man really attacked. Unfortunately, he didn't know that I was on guard against him. Although this attack injured me a little, it was not enough to harm my foundation. Of course, he was not an earth saint, and had not condensed a saint godhead. His physical body had not transformed into a saint physique. Therefore, even if he used faith crystals to heal his injuries, it would be 10 times slower than an earth saint. On the star-plucking platform, Yi Chong Tian, whose path was blocked by Xie Xiaofeng, had a complicated expression on his face, especially when he heard the people around the star-plucking platform mocking and ridiculing him. His old face turned green and white, and he almost vomited blood in anger. What a good Lin Feng! Almost instantly, he thought of the scene where Lin Feng made them swear an oath before the life and death battle. In his opinion, that Lin Feng seemed to have expected everything that was about to happen, and had set up a trap in advance. Yi Chong Tian had foolishly walked into this trap. In the end, not only did he fail to kill Lin Feng, but he had also ruined the reputation he had painstakingly built over the years. His hatred for Lin Feng had seeped into his bones. If Xie Xiaofeng had not blocked in front of him, Yi Chong Tian was afraid that he would have rushed up and slashed Lin Feng with his blade. "Old fart, didn't you swear that you wouldn't make a move?" The most infuriating thing was that Lin Feng was adding oil to the fire, calling Yi Chong Tian an old fart. Yi Chong Tian was so angry that he almost fainted. "Old fart, try and make a move again. Let's see if you can cover the sky with one hand. I don't believe that no one in the Shuntian sect can stop you." Yi Chong Tian wanted to kill him, and he also wanted to kill Yi Chong Tian. Since this old man had already made a move against him, Lin Feng was not a kind person. Once he found the right opportunity, he would not hesitate to kill Yi Chong Tian. One must know that he had not revealed his true strength at all. Not to mention his 2 life-saving trump cards, instant transmission and black hole. Just heaven's wrath was enough to make Yi Chong Tian suffer, and the combination of countercurrent and heaven's wrath could definitely take Yi Chong Tian's life. "Lin Feng, you little brat, you're courting death." Yi Chong Tian was already on the verge of exploding in anger, and after being provoked by Lin Feng, his aura suddenly surged violently, and a crazy killing intent spread out, causing everyone in the vicinity to tremble. At this time, Long Hua frowned and transmitted a message, "Brother Yi, calm down. Can't you see? This little brat is deliberately provoking you." That's right, Lin Feng was deliberately provoking Yi Chong Tian. As long as Yi Chong Tian lost his mind and chased after him, he would have an excuse to kill Yi Chong Tian, and no one would be able to say anything. Even the mysterious sect master would have no reason to punish him. Unfortunately, his plan was seen through by Long Hua, which indirectly saved Yi Chong Tian's life. Sure enough, after being reminded by Long Hua, Yi Chong Tian instantly became alert. He glanced at Lin Feng, whose eyes contained a trace of hidden killing intent. Yi Chong Tian calmed down at once. What a vicious little brat. He actually provoked my emotions with just a few words, and put me in a position of disbelief and injustice. He took a deep look at Lin Feng. It seems that this little brat is still hiding some of his strength. Otherwise, where did he get the confidence to take the opportunity to kill me? Although he did not know where Lin Feng's confidence came from, he was certain that Lin Feng's strength was definitely not what they had seen. Otherwise, Lin Feng would not have the confidence to provoke him. After all, the consequences of provoking him were quite serious. If one's strength was not enough, they might be killed by him. Chapter 487. Yi Changtian struggled in his heart for a moment, but in the end, he looked deeply at Lin Feng and left. Seeing that the battle had finally ended, Long Hua, Zhang Lai, Yen Chao, Yun Hua, and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. If Yi Changtian was determined to deal with Lin Feng, then today's matter would be troublesome. In the end, they might even be implicated. Before the sect master left, he had repeatedly instructed them to maintain order in Shuntian sect. If today's matter led to a war, they would not be able to answer to the sect master. What a pity! Lin Feng shook his head regretfully. I missed a good opportunity. After Yi Changtian left, the core disciples of Gold Refining Peak also left with their tails between their legs. Long Hua knew that now was not the time to be swayed by emotions. Although he did not want to see Lin Feng grow, he could not be too biased. He slowly flew up and said to Lin Feng, regarding today's matter, Yi Peak Master was indeed in the wrong. I apologize on his behalf. I hope that this matter will end here and no one will pursue this matter in the future. Lin Feng was still a core disciple in name, so it was not good for him to refute Long Hua, even though he was not afraid of him. As long as he does not take the initiative to provoke this disciple will not pursue this matter. Lin Feng said indifferently. Long Hua nodded. He did not expect Lin Feng to guarantee anything. He only needed Lin Feng to express his stance. As for what he thought in the dark, it did not matter. Yi Changtian had caused this trouble, so he did not need to get involved in this muddy water. Everyone, let's go. Long Hua nodded to Zhang Lai and the rest. Not long after, the Peak Masters left the star-picking platform. Yun Hua even gave Lin Feng an appreciative smile when she left. Obviously, she was very satisfied with Lin Feng's performance. Jing Ting had already become her disciple, and her strength was not much weaker than her. However, she was extremely infatuated with Lin Feng. Since she was unable to change Jing Ting's mind, she could only pray that Lin Feng would not lose face for Jing Ting and cause gossip. Now, it seemed that she had been overthinking things. Judging from Lin Feng's performance today, he was not inferior to Jing Ting. In fact, he was even more outstanding than Jing Ting. Such a man was worthy of Jing Ting's lifelong reliance. Of course, if Lin Feng's performance today was extremely unbearable, then she would have a different attitude. Fortunately, everything was developing in the best direction. Yan Luo, Wu Shun, Yun Zhongzi, and the others looked at the stubborn and proud figure from afar. They shook their heads and sighed with bitter smiles, then turned around and left. After the battle between Lin Feng and Juexin Doken, as well as Yi Changtian's sneak attack, they no longer had the confidence to fight against Lin Feng. If he lost his confidence before the battle even started, the consequences would be obvious. However, they couldn't be blamed for this. They could only blame Lin Feng for giving them too much of a shock. Many of the core disciples also had complicated expressions on their faces. They actually had a feeling that they would never be able to catch up to him. Beside the star-picking platform, there were only the core disciples of the weapon refining peak, Jing Ting, and a few other disciples of the Fair Maiden Peak. There was no one else. Lin Feng won. He killed Juexin Doken. He even blocked Yi Peak's sneak attack. The core disciples of the weapon refining peak were still in disbelief. The number one genius of the weapon refining peak, one of the four famous geniuses, had died in the hands of Lin Feng. Moreover, he was killed by Lin Feng after he had broken through. The surprise came too quickly, making them feel an unreal sense of happiness, as if they were in a dream. Was this monstrous genius really a core disciple of the weapon refining peak? For a moment, they didn't dare to make a sound. They were afraid that if they made a sound, it would shatter this beautiful dream. Jing-Ting, on the other hand, gently stroked her hair. Her gentle smile was full of pride. The core disciples of the fair maiden Peak beside her also looked at Lin Feng in a daze. This ordinary man usually didn't reveal anything, and his temperament was reserved. However, when he burst out, it was like the waves of the sea, hitting and shaking their hearts. One wave after another, as if there was no limit. He was like a man who was infatuated with a woman. Junior Sister Jing's taste is indeed not something we can compare to. The core disciples of the fair maiden Peak glanced at Jing-Ting beside them and couldn't help but lower their heads and sigh. They thought that Lin Feng was very ordinary and only saw the ordinary side of Lin Feng. However, only Jing-Ting saw the extraordinary side of Lin Feng and didn't leave Lin Feng. Therefore, they had never found a man that they liked and liked them. From this, they also understood a very important principle. One couldn't judge a person by their appearance. Appearance was innate, temperament was fake, and even cultivation could be fake. It was a pity that Lin Feng was their junior sister Jing's man. Otherwise, they might have already started to pursue Lin Feng. "What's wrong with you guys?" Lin Feng felt that the surroundings were a little strange, and asked the crowd cautiously. The moment he spoke, the silence was instantly broken and was replaced by excited shouts and cheers. "It's true, junior brother Lin Feng really won. It's not a dream, it's all real. From today onwards, our weapon refining peak won't have to suffer anymore. An Earth Stage high-tier weapon refiner, Earth Stage 5 late stage, this is our weapon refining peak's genius." They were crazy, crying, laughing, and crying. If one wasn't a core disciple of the weapon refining peak, it was impossible to understand their feelings. In the next moment, they all looked at Lin Feng at the same time. Lin Feng faintly had a bad premonition. Without waiting for Lin Feng to speak, they all rushed towards Lin Feng. Several people lifted Lin Feng up and threw him high up. "Lin Feng! Lin Feng! Lin Feng!" The loud and orderly shouts converged into a river of sound, mixed with trickles of joy, turning the weapon refining peak into a sea of happiness. Every core disciple of the weapon refining peak had a joyful smile on their faces. At the edge of a cliff in the weapon refining peak, Lin Feng sat in a comfortable position on a huge rock, with Jing-Ting leaning on his side, looking at the slowly rising sun. The sky was red as if it was on fire. The red clouds were boundless, magnificent, and magnificent. Below them was a lingering fog, a celestial aura lingering, so beautiful that it was intoxicating. "Tinger, thank you." Lin Feng's tone had a trace of gratitude, and also a trace of apology. "One day, I will hold the grandest wedding in history with you. I will make you the happiest woman in the world, and let everyone in the world witness our happiness." Saying romantic words was the instinct of every man in love. Of course, Lin Feng also had the ability to fulfill every romantic word he said, but he still needed some time. Even if Jing-Ting was a proud woman, after hearing Lin Feng's somewhat old-fashioned romantic words, she was still moved speechless. After 3 days and 3 nights on the huge rock, Jing-Ting reluctantly bid farewell and left. As for Lin Feng, he returned to the Bright Moon residence, and in his own courtyard, took the golden body pill. The golden body pill's medicinal effect was very strong, but its medicinal effect was very gentle. In a short while, Lin Feng had completely refined it. Inside the house, Lin Feng stood up, clenching his fist. A fierce power was brewing in his fist. Peak of the middle 5th stage of the Earth realm. His physical body had already reached the peak of the middle 5th stage of the Earth realm, the same as his strength. His battle prowess had once again increased by a large margin. His physical body was at the peak of the middle 5th stage of the Earth realm, and his strength was at the peak of the middle 5th stage of the Earth realm. Combined with the 3 great techniques and the 2 great fusion techniques, he was confident that he could fight against an early 6th stage of the Earth realm. In the next moment, His aura immediately retracted, and he returned to his ordinary appearance. It's a pity that the blood-violet flexible sword is too precious and cannot be easily shown to others. Otherwise, why would I fear an expert of the late 6th stage of the Earth realm? Lin Feng sighed inwardly. A 6th Revolution Saint artifact could cause countless experts below the Great Perfection Earth Saint realm to go crazy. A 7th Revolution Saint artifact was usually only possessed by a Great Perfection Earth Saint realm expert, and they were highly valued. An 8th Revolution Saint artifact was enough to cause many Great Perfection Earth Saint realm experts to fight over it, causing a storm of blood. As for 9th Revolution Saint artifacts, there should not be more than 30 of them in the 7-5 Elements secret grounds. Even the weapons used by some Saint Kings were 9th Revolution Saint artifacts. Lin Feng clearly possessed a 9th Revolution Saint artifact, but he did not dare to use it in front of others. This was because if the news were to leak out, none of the Great Perfection Earth Saints would be able to resist the temptation of a 9th Revolution Saint artifact. At that time, the entire Shuntian sect would be turned into ruins in the battle between the Great Perfection Earth Saint. Although the Shuntian sect's sect master, Kong Yuan, was a Great Perfection Earth Saint, he was ranked very low among the Great Perfection Earth Saints. Although he was not ranked last, he was not much better. Even a Great Perfection Earth Saint like Kong Yuan could not keep a 9th Revolution Saint artifact, not to mention Lin Feng. An ordinary man is innocent, but possessing a treasure is a crime. Lin Feng deeply understood this logic. Junior brother Lin Feng. A voice sounded from outside. Lin Feng opened the door and smiled. May I ask what senior brother is here for? The person who came was a core disciple of the Blacksmith Peak. Although he was not familiar with Lin Feng, he still had some status among the core disciples of the Blacksmith Peak. Junior brother Lin Feng, the Peak Master has ordered us to make a trip to the main hall of the Blacksmith Peak. It is said that there is something important to announce. Although this core disciple was much older than Lin Feng and had stayed in the Blacksmith Peak for more than 1,000,000 years, when he spoke to Lin Feng, he was extremely respectful. There was even a trace of worship in his eyes. Lin Feng was a little puzzled, but he still nodded. Okay, I'll go over now. After a while, all the core disciples of the Blacksmith Peak had arrived at the main hall of the Blacksmith Peak. Many of the core disciples, including Nan Yang and Mo Zhu, followed Lin Feng's lead and consciously stood behind Lin Feng. Gradually, Lin Feng became the leader of the core disciples. Xie Xiaofeng had been waiting for a long time. Seeing that everyone had arrived, he nodded slightly and said slowly, looking at the time, this year's Blacksmith Youth Competition is about to begin. You should have guessed the reason why I asked you to come, right? Lin Feng was puzzled. Blacksmith Youth Competition? I almost forgot, you just became a core disciple 10 years ago. Xie Xiaofeng was stunned for a moment before he pondered. The Blacksmith Youth Competition is a competition jointly held by hundreds of sects and forces in the northwest region of the Bloodridge continent. The so-called Blacksmith Youth Competition is to enter the Blacksmith Barren Forest and kill the Blacksmith demons. The Blacksmith monster is an extremely ferocious creature. It is neither human nor demon. Although it is called a Blacksmith monster, it is actually a monster that is neither human nor demon. This monster's fighting strength is extremely strong, and there are many of them. Moreover, it has no intelligence. Whenever a living creature approaches, it will be attacked by it. The most frightening thing is that the Blacksmith monster is extremely infectious. Once it infects a human or demon, it will lose its mind and be assimilated into the Blacksmith monster. Not only in the Suiyang realm, but also in the Reincarnation realm and the other 5 secret areas, there are a large number of Blacksmith monsters. Therefore, eliminating the Blacksmith monsters is a sacred mission that every one of us should shoulder. The Blacksmith Youth Competition is a great competition specially held to eliminate the blacksmith monsters. When talking about the blacksmith monster, Xie Xiaofeng's expression was quite heavy. Even when Lin Feng was in danger of a life-and-death battle, he had not seen him so heavy. Blacksmith monster. Lin Feng faintly had a feeling that the blacksmith monster was not as simple as Xie Xiaofeng said. Chapter 488. This monster sounds a bit like a virus. Lin Feng lowered his head and pondered. They have many characteristics of a virus. The only difference is that they are bigger and more powerful. Even though he hadn't come into contact with a monster yet, Xie Xiaofeng's expression was so serious when he talked about the monster. It wasn't hard to imagine how terrifying the monster was. Xie Xiaofeng's eyes paused on Lin Feng for a while, then he turned to the crowd and said, "The rules of this year's monster slaying competition are the same as before. Killing a monster, slaying 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 a. Finally, the rewards will be distributed according to the overall ranking of the core disciples. As for the specific rewards, I don't know yet. But don't worry, the Great Elder will explain it in detail. In short, the sect will not mistreat you. Great Elder! The disciples of the Refining Peak were shocked. Nanyang asked, "May I ask the Peak Master, the Great Elder has always been elusive. He has never personally led a team before. Why did he suddenly appear this time?" Mo Zhu looked worried. Could it be that this monster-slaying youth competition is different? You guessed right. This year's monster-slaying youth competition is indeed different. Xie Xiaofeng didn't hide it from the crowd. Of course, you don't need to think too much. The reason why the Great Elder appeared and personally led the team is because this year's monster-slaying youth competition will not only involve you, but also the direct disciples of the other forces. But when the time comes, they will be individually ranked, so it won't affect your ranking. What? The crowd below suddenly exclaimed. Direct disciples, those 7 elusive direct disciples would also participate in this year's monster-slaying youth competition? In the past, it was extremely difficult to see any of them. But now, all 7 of them were gathered in the monster-slaying youth competition, which was an eye-opener for many people. What's wrong? Are true disciples very powerful? Lin Feng asked in a low voice, not understanding what was going on. Of course, he knew that every true disciple was a super expert of Earth Stage 6. However, his current strength was already comparable to a super expert of Earth Stage 6. Moreover, he was a fake Earth Stage high-tier blacksmith. Therefore, he didn't look up to the 7 true disciples like the other core disciples. It wasn't just Lin Feng. In fact, Yama, Huoshun, Yunzhongzi, Jingting, and Ljueshin Doken, who had been killed by Lin Feng, were all the same. In the eyes of these geniuses, although the true disciples were powerful, they were far from the level that they could only look up to. They were confident that they could catch up and even surpass the 7 true disciples in the near future. Whether they could do it or not, at least they had the confidence to do so. This was the difference between an ordinary genius and a top genius. Nanyang, Mo Zhu, and the others glanced at Lin Feng. They wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. Thinking of the terrifying strength that Lin Feng had shown a few days ago, as well as his terrifying blacksmithing ability, they didn't know what to say. Perhaps only Lin Feng had the confidence to ask this question. However, no one could laugh at him, because, with the combat strength and blacksmithing ability that he had shown, in fact, he wasn't inferior to the true disciples at the bottom of the rankings. Of course, compared to the top 3 true disciples, he was still a little bit inferior. After explaining some of the basic matters of the monster-slaying youth competition, Xie Xiaofeng looked deeply at Lin Feng and reminded him, "Lin Feng, the monster-slaying youth competition is very powerful. You can't let your guard down. You should know that hundreds of thousands of years ago, I almost died in the hands of a monster-slaying youth demon at the later stage of Earth Stage 5. With your current strength, if you encounter a monster-slaying youth demon at the later stage of Earth Stage 5, your chances of survival are less than 10%. The monster-slaying youth demon was also a monster-slaying youth demon at the later stage of Earth Stage 5, but the monster-slaying youth demon was much more powerful than a human. Moreover, the weakest monster-slaying youth demon was at the first stage of Earth Stage 5, and there was no monster-slaying youth demon at the lower stage of Earth Stage 5. Hearing Xie Xiaofeng's reminder, Lin Feng's heart trembled. What a powerful monster-slaying youth demon! Although his combat strength was comparable to a monster-slaying youth demon at the early stage of Earth Stage 6, he didn't refute Xie Xiaofeng's words. Instead, he nodded seriously. "Thank you for your reminder, Peak Master. I will act according to my ability." Xie Xiaofeng nodded with satisfaction. He was about to wave his hand to dismiss everyone when he suddenly remembered something. "Oh right, Lin Feng, other than the monster-slaying youth demon, you need to be careful of another person." Lin Feng raised his eyebrows. "Who?" "Lin Rong, the 6th true disciple." Xie Xiaofeng's expression became serious. Although this person is despised by others, his strength is undeniably powerful. He is definitely at the early stage of Earth Stage 6. If I were to fight against him, I would lose more than I win. Lin Rong? Lin Feng had heard this name from Sun Yu and Lu Hu before. He didn't expect Xie Xiaofeng to mention it again. However, he had no enmity with Lin Rong. Would Lin Rong be so arrogant as to openly deal with him? Looking at Lin Feng's expression, Xie Xiaofeng knew the doubts in his heart. He explained, "Everyone in Shuntian Prefecture knows about Lin Rong's vile deeds. However, he relied on his tyrannical strength and the sect master's favor to repeatedly ruin people's innocence, but no one can stop him. I know that you are quite close to the genius disciple of Fair Maiden Peak, so you need to be careful of Lin Rong. Otherwise, it might lead to terrible consequences." After a pause, he continued, "Of course, there is another more important reason. Lin Rong was promoted to a true disciple from a core disciple of Gold Refinement Peak. Although Gold Refinement Peak can't control Lin Rong anymore, Yi Changtian helped him greatly in the early stage. The two of them have a close relationship, so I'm worried that Yi Changtian will ask Lin Rong to deal with you." Lin Feng suddenly realized the seriousness of the matter, and his expression became even more serious. "I understand." However, although he was in a serious mood, he was not afraid. It was fine if Lin Rong did not come, but if he really came to deal with him, he did not mind competing with him. He, Lin Feng, was not a soft persimmon that anyone could bully. Lin Rong was not the only one who had the strength of an early stage of Earth Stage 6. Of course, he was still a little depressed. If this matter happened to anyone, they would not be in a good mood. There was an additional powerful enemy for no reason, and they could only passively wait for the opponent's provocation before they could fight back. Who would not be depressed? Go back and prepare. 3 days later, I will bring you to the sect's Great Void Peak to gather. Xie Xiaofeng waved his hand. "Also, remember not to mention anything about the monster to anyone." "Yes, Peak Master," everyone said in unison. They left the Crafting Peak's main hall. Everyone left in groups of 2s and 3s, but when they passed by Lin Feng, they would respectfully cup their hands and say, "Junior brother Lin, we will leave first." When most of the people left, Lin Feng asked Nan Yang and Emo Zhu, "Why did Peak Master tell us not to mention anything about the monster to anyone?" He was a little confused. Emo Zhu shook her head, indicating that she did not know. Nan Yang pondered, "I know a little about this matter, but whether it is right or not, I can't guarantee." "Senior brother Nan, why don't you tell us?" Lin Feng asked curiously. "I heard that the sect gave such an order because they did not want to cause panic. The reason why we're able to come into contact with the monster is because our strength is at least at the 4th stage of the Earth realm, and we're all core disciples of the sect. Outsiders, even 4th stage of the Earth realm experts, don't know about these secrets. Even some 5th stage of the Earth realm experts don't know about the existence of the monster. Nan Yang's expression turned solemn as a trace of fear flashed through his eyes. "You don't know how terrifying monster hunters are. Only when you truly come into contact with them will you understand how terrifying they are. If ordinary people knew about the existence of monster hunters, and that these monster hunters were all transformed from humans and demonic beasts, you can imagine how much panic it would cause." Lin Feng frowned. "Ordinary people have the right to know about such important matters, right? After all, who knew if any of those banshees were his family or friends? Hey, what's the point of thinking so much? Since the sect had issued a gag order, there was naturally a reason. We don't know because we're not strong enough. We don't have the qualifications to come into contact with that level." Nan Yang patted Lin Feng's shoulder and said, "You'd better not worry about this. Prepare yourself well. The most important thing is to kill as many monsters as you can in the competition." The Swords Lay Gang Youth Competition was about to begin. All the main peaks were filled with undercurrents. Many of the core disciples were preparing themselves. They planned to show off their skills in the Swords Lay Gang Youth Competition and strive for a good ranking to obtain more rewards. Thus, although the Shuntian sect looked very calm on the surface, it was actually surging with wave. Bright Moon House Courtyard. Lin Feng's consciousness was in the first space, painstakingly comprehending the mysteries of the 1,000 transformations illusory breathing technique. Since there were only 3 days left until the Swords Lay Gang Youth Competition, it would be very difficult for him to make a significant breakthrough in his comprehension of the laws. Thus, he chose to comprehend the 1,000 transformations illusory breathing technique. His 1,000 transformations illusory breathing technique was already close to the level of great accomplishment. As long as he deepened his comprehension and spent a bit more time, he would be able to break through the last barrier and reach the level of great accomplishment. Once he reached the level of great accomplishment, ordinary Earth Sage Great Perfection Realm experts would not be able to see through his cultivation. Time passed slowly. 3 days later, in the wee hours of the morning, Lin Feng suddenly opened his eyes. A bright light flashed in his eyes. "I've finally reached the level of great accomplishment." At the last moment before the Swords Lay Gang Youth Competition, Lin Feng's 1,000 transformations illusory breathing technique had finally reached the level of great accomplishment. This was undoubtedly good news. "I wonder if my 1,000 transformations illusory breathing technique can deceive the Swords Lay monster?" Although this idea was a bit whimsical, it was not completely hopeless. "I can give it a try at that time. If I succeed, then the 1,000 transformations illusory breathing technique will be a great help to me in gaining points." The sky was just beginning to brighten. Lin Feng rested for a bit, then got up and stretched his body. He opened the door and prepared to go to the main hall of the crafting peak. Junior brother Lin Feng, Sun Yu and Lu, who had been waiting outside for a long time. When Lin Feng opened the door, they walked up with a smile. Lin Feng laughed. "Let's go together." "That's exactly what I was thinking," the two of them replied with a smile. Not long after, the core disciples of the crafting peak once again gathered in the main hall. Xie Xiaofeng changed into a set of gray clothes, which made him look more reserved. Since everyone is here, let's go. Xie Xiaofeng swept his gaze across the crowd. Seeing that the 30-plus core disciples of the crafting peak were all present, he slowly flew up and led the crowd to the Great Void Summit. The Great Void Summit was a small island floating in midair. It was the highest authority of the Shuntian sect, and also the most important part of the sect. This was the residence of the Shuntian sect's sect leader, 3 grand elders, and 7 core disciples. It was also the place where the sect leader and elders gave out orders. Normally, even the 10 peak masters did not have the qualifications to enter this place. The core disciples would only have the opportunity to come here once every 10,000 years. In about half an incense's time, the group arrived at the Great Void Summit. The scenery around the Great Void Summit was beautiful, and the weather was pleasant. It was like a different world compared to the 10 main peaks. It hung in the air above the 10 main peaks all year round, and was surrounded by a formation and layers of fog. If one did not know the route and barged in recklessly, even if one was an Earth Stage 6 expert, only death would await them. We're here. Xie Xiaofeng led the group to a stop and said to the disciples of the crafting peak, "You guys wait here quietly, I'll go back first." "Farewell, Peak Master," everyone said. Xie Xiaofeng nodded slightly and turned around. His figure turned into a grayish-white shadow and disappeared in an instant. Other than the disciples of the crafting peak, the other disciples of the main peaks were also present. However, everyone maintained their silence and did not make any noise. To the disciples of the crafting peak, the Great Void Summit was the most sacred place of the Shuntian sect. Even the extremely conceited geniuses such as Yama and Huisheng had to behave themselves and wait quietly after arriving here. Not long after, an old man slowly walked out from the main hall in front of them. He was one of the 3 grand elders of the Shuntian sect. The eyes of all the core disciples gathered on the old man. He lowered his head and walked very slowly. He looked old and senile, as if he could not walk steadily at any moment and would fall down at any moment. However, a mysterious pressure was emitted from his body. This pressure did not have any offensive power, but it caused everyone's soul to tremble. They felt as if they could feel the will of heaven and earth from this old man. Without any reason, they had a feeling that if this old man wanted to deal with them, he would not even need to move his hand. With just a thought, he could take their lives. What kind of power was this? Everyone could not imagine it, let alone describe it with words. In front of this old man, they were like grains of sand in the universe, like ants. They could not even muster up the thought of resistance. When he raised his head, his pair of turbid eyes instantly became clear. His eyes were like deep black holes. With just a glance, one would be sucked into them and lose their mind. A casual glance from him could affect everyone's emotions. When he was sad, everyone was sad. When he was happy, everyone was happy. When he was angry, everyone was angry. When he was angry, everyone was angry. When he was happy, everyone laughed. Is this the complete Earth Saint realm? Lin Feng was lost for a few breaths before he suddenly regained his senses. Soon after, he no longer dared to look into the old man's eyes. He was extremely fearful of the old man in his heart. Although he had once seen a complete Earth Saint realm expert who was even more tyrannical and terrifying than this old man, he was still too weak at that time. He was simply unable to understand the might of a complete Earth Saint realm expert. As his strength grew stronger, he felt even more insignificant. My current strength is too far away from a complete Earth Saint realm expert. If a complete Earth Saint realm expert wants to kill me, he only needs to think about it. Lin Feng had never felt so small and insignificant in his life. The confidence brought about by the rapid increase in his strength in the past few days had also quietly disappeared. The trace of pride and complacency in his heart had disappeared once again, allowing him to have a clearer understanding of his position. The old man seemed to have noticed Lin Feng's reaction, and his surprised gaze paused for a moment on Lin Feng's body. He muttered with great interest, "This little brat actually managed to get rid of my will's influence so quickly. When did our Shuntian sect have such an extraordinary genius?" Chapter 489. The old man's gaze did not linger on Lin Feng for long before he withdrew it. Glancing around, he slowly said, "The rewards for this gang extermination youth competition are more generous than before. The first 1,000 will be rewarded with 100 top-grade belief crystals. The first 100 will be rewarded with 1,000 top-grade belief crystals. The 4th to 10th will be rewarded with a 5th Revolution Saint tool or a 2nd Revolution Saint armor. The 3rd will be rewarded with a neutral Earth Essence Stone, the 2nd will be rewarded with 3 neutral Earth Essence Stones, and the 1st will be rewarded with 10 neutral Earth Essence Stones. The rewards can be stacked. In other words, the reward for the first place includes all the previous rewards, which is 1,100 Supreme-grade Faith Crystals, a 5th-grade Saint Artifact or 2nd-grade Saint Armor, and 14 attribute-less Earth Essence Stones." He spoke very slowly, but his voice was as loud as a bell, clearly entering everyone's ears. However, everyone's attention was clearly not on this point at the moment. This was because everyone was shocked by the rewards that he had mentioned. Lin Feng, Jing Ting, and a few other new core disciples might not realize how generous the rewards were, but the other core disciples who had participated in the gang extermination youth competition many times knew better than anyone else how generous the rewards were. They clearly remembered that in each previous gang extermination youth competition, the reward for the first place was only 1 neutral Earth Essence Stone, and the 2nd and 3rd place did not receive any neutral Earth Essence Stone at all. But this time, the number of non-attributed Earth Essence Stones had increased to a total of 19. According to the Supreme Elder's understanding, the first place could get 14 neutral Earth Essence Stones, the 2nd place could get 4, and the 3rd place could get 1. A total of 19 neutral Earth Essence Stones. This was definitely the first time since the gang extermination youth competition was held. Of course, the increase of the rewards by 10 times also meant that the competition would be more intense and more difficult. "What's a neutral Earth Essence Stone?" Lin Feng asked in a low voice doubtfully. But because everyone was shocked, the surroundings fell into a strange silence, so his lowered voice was particularly obvious. The core disciple at the late stage of Earth Essence Stone at Gold Refining Peak immediately scolded, "How dare you speak when the Supreme Elder is giving a lecture?" Lin Feng glanced at him and smiled faintly. "Since you can't speak, why is your voice louder than mine?" "You." The young man's gaze turned cold, but there was some fear in his heart. He quickly turned to the Supreme Elder and apologized. "I'm sorry, Supreme Elder, please forgive me for my disrespect." The Supreme Elder looked at him with a faint smile. After a while, he said faintly, "Forget it, I don't have the time to argue with you." Looking back at Lin Feng, the Grand Elder said, "Since you don't know what a neutral Earth Essence Stone is, I will explain it to you. The Earthly Essence Stone was also known as the Law Exhilarating Stone. It could increase the speed of an Earth Elementalist's comprehension of the laws by 10,000 times. One Earthly Essence Stone could be maintained for about 3 months. 3 months of bitter cultivation was equivalent to 900,000 years of bitter cultivation for an ordinary person. The attributeless Earth Essence Stone was an extremely special type of Earth Essence Stone. It was also the most precious type. This was because the attributeless Earthly Essence Stone did not restrict one type of law. It could adapt to any type of law, including even the 7 supreme laws. But Earth Essence Stones are very rare in the world, and neutral Earth Essence Stones are priceless. After 10,000 years of accumulation, the entire northwest region of the Bloodridge continent could only produce over 100 neutral Earth Essence Stones. After 10,000 years of accumulation, the northwest region could only produce over 100 neutral earth essence stones. Yet, 19 neutral earth essence stones were given out in one go as the prize for the Swarm Annihilation Youth Competition. Lin Feng was instantly shocked. Increase the speed of law comprehension by 10,000 times. There was actually such a treasure in the world. If someone could obtain 100 neutral earth essence stones, wouldn't that person be able to cultivate to the peak of Earth Saint Realm in a short 10 to 20 years? Of course, everyone had their own limit. For example, Xie Xiaofeng, Yi Changtian, Long Hua, and the others were at the late stage of Earth Essence Stone. If they didn't have any other fortuitous encounters in their lives, they would only be at the late stage of Earth Essence Stone when they died of old age. The first place of the Swarm Annihilation Youth Competition is mine. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he secretly made up his mind. The champion would be able to obtain 14 neutral Earth Essence Stones, and the neutral Earth Essence Stones could save a lot of time in comprehending the laws. It could allow one's strength to increase crazily in the shortest amount of time. No one could resist this temptation, not even Lin Feng. On the other hand, Yan Luo, Wu Shun, and the others weren't too surprised, as if they already knew this news. Lin Feng saw their calm expressions and guessed in his heart. Could it be that they chose to participate in this year's sect assessment at the same time for the Swarm Annihilation Youth Competition? Although he didn't know if his guess was right, the possibility was relatively high. It's about time. Do you have any other questions? If not, let's set off. The Supreme Elder looked at everyone indifferently. Everyone lowered their heads and said in unison, "No more questions." The Supreme Elder nodded and said, "Then let's set off." Not long after, the core disciples of the 10 main peaks were led by the Supreme Elder to the transmission array at the foot of the mountain. In the blink of an eye, the large group of people disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only the faint buzzing sound of the transmission array. The location of the Swarm Annihilation Youth Competition was located in the Swarm Annihilation Forest, and other than a few people who knew of its location, no one else knew about it. The location of the desolate demon forest was a top secret. Even in a large sect like the Shuntian sect, only direct disciples or peak leaders knew about it. As for the outside world, only those who had reached the great circle of the Earth Saint Realm, or those close to them who had reached the great circle of the Earth Saint Realm, would be informed of the location of the forest. Although many core disciples of large sects had been to the Swarm Annihilation Forest many times, no one knew of its location. Every time the core disciples went to the Swarm Annihilation Forest, they would be led by a peak master or a supreme elder. After about 10,000 transmissions, when all the core disciples were confused and disoriented, the group finally arrived at their destination. They were at the edge of a plain, and in front of them was a huge forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. The forest was lush with ancient trees and was full of vitality. Not far away, a small stream extended out from the forest. The water of the stream was clear and transparent, as if there was not a trace of impurities. The ground was covered with vegetation, and all kinds of strange flowers competed with each other in beauty. It was a beautiful sight to behold. This scene stunned Lin Feng. Is this really the Swarm Annihilation Forest? He had originally thought that the Swarm Annihilation Forest would be a place filled with killing intent, but he did not expect it to be such a beautiful place. Are you surprised? Nanyang smiled and said, "When I came here for the first time, I was also greatly shocked." Mo Zhu nodded slightly. Don't think that the Swarm Annihilation Forest is beautiful, but the dangers within are far beyond your imagination. Her tone became even more serious. This is a man-eating forest. Every time the core disciples participate in the Swarm Annihilation Youth Competition, 1/3 of them will stay here forever. Hearing this, Lin Feng's expression also became more serious, and his mood became inexplicably heavy. This time, the Shuntian sect had brought more than 400 core disciples. Did this mean that when the Swarm Annihilation Youth Competition ended, more than 100 of them would lose their lives? It really is a man-eating forest. Linfeng's mood was no longer as relaxed as before. Of course, you don't have to worry too much. With your strength, as long as you are careful, you will definitely not encounter any danger. Nanyang smiled. Unless you enter the inner area of the forest, there is basically no swarm annihilation forest that can threaten you. Linfeng nodded, but did not express his opinion. After a moment of silence, he transmitted a message to Jing Ting. Ting you will come with us later. Among the core disciples of the Fair Maiden Peak, Jing Ting hesitated. But, if I go, what about the disciples of the Fair Maiden Peak? Let them come with us. Linfeng said, with the disciples of our two peaks working together, we should be able to reduce the number of casualties. Jing Ting thought for a moment, nodded, and transmitted a message. Okay, I will bring them with you later. Other than the core disciples of the Heaven Ascension sect, there were also many disciples from other powers. As time passed, the entrance to the forest was filled with people. These people came from different powers. Some of them were weaker than the Heaven Ascension sect, while others were stronger. Every group was clearly separated from each other, forming their own small groups as they waited for the competition to begin. About half an hour later, 7 figures flew over the Shuntian sect's core disciples. With a few Xiao sounds, the 7 figures landed in front of the Shuntian sect's core disciples. The moment they arrived, they became the focus of everyone's attention. Like magnets, they attracted everyone's attention. Many of the core disciples became spirited as they looked at the 7 figures with fanatical and excited expressions. Their eyes were filled with reverence. A person's name was like a tree's shadow. The 7 core disciples were all geniuses with unparalleled talent. They were the top geniuses of the Shuntian sect, and were the goal of all the disciples. Their fame had even spread to the surrounding prefectures. They were the pride of the Shuntian prefecture and the Shuntian sect, and the idols of all the younger generation. Even Yen Luo, Huashen, and Yun Zhongzi couldn't help but reveal a trace of reverence. Although they didn't think that they were much weaker than the other party, there was still an insurmountable gap between them and the other party. You guys are finally here. The Grand Elder's solemn and wrinkled face unexpectedly revealed a trace of a smile. The leader of the group was a young man with an extraordinary bearing. With a modest smile on his face, he said, "Apologies for making the Grand Elder wait for so long." The Grand Elder shook his head with a smile, saying, "I believe the sect master has already told you the details of the competition. I don't expect any of you to take first place, but if there's a chance, try your best to take third place. As for the other 6, it would be best if you can enter the top 30. Otherwise, it would be a pity to miss out on such a generous reward." The young man smiled. "I'll do my best." Obviously, he didn't have much confidence in this. "By the way, I heard that a few extraordinary geniuses have appeared in our Shuntian sect this time. Is that true?" The young man changed the topic. The Grand Elder smiled. "There are a few good seedlings, but compared to you, they are still a little lacking. However, they should have the opportunity to become a true disciple in the future." Hee, that's not bad." The young man didn't have a complacent reaction. Obviously, he was used to the outside world's praise. However, one of the young men with fair skin and a thin figure wearing a purple robe interjected, "Grand Elder, your words don't seem to be right. I received a message from Yi Changtian saying that 2 extraordinary geniuses have appeared in the Shuntian sect this time. Especially that rookie called Linfeng. He is extremely arrogant and brutal. Not only did he kill a peerless genius that Yi Changtian valued, he also caused Yi Changtian to suffer a big loss. His fame in the sect is unparalleled, and even true disciples like us can't compare to him. I wonder if this is true?" Hearing this, the Supreme Elder frowned and said indifferently, That's right, there is such a thing. Who is he? Can you point him out so that I can admire him? The corner of the young man's mouth curled up in a mocking smile. From the Grand Elder's reaction, he didn't seem to like the young man in front of him. However, the young man was after all a true disciple with great potential. Once he reached the great circle of the Earth Saint realm in the future, his strength would surpass him in one fell swoop. Whether it was strength or status, he would be above him. Therefore, the Grand Elder didn't want to offend any true disciple, no matter how much he disliked them. Taking a deep breath, the Grand Elder was about to speak when a voice interrupted. "It's me." Not far away, a thin figure slowly walked over. "I'm the Lin Feng you're looking for." Facing 7 true disciples, he didn't have the slightest fear. His steps were firm, and he walked over step by step, neither fast nor slow. "If I'm not wrong, this senior brother should be Senior Brother Lin Rong, right? You know me?" The young man was surprised. Of course, Senior Brother Lin Rong is famous for his fighting prowess. Everyone knows who he is. Other than Senior Brother Lin Rong, there's no one else in the world who can do such things as rape, plunder, and bully others. Senior Brother Lin Rong's fighting prowess is enough to stop babies from crying at night. Even monsters would turn pale with fright when they hear it. Compared to Senior Brother Lin Rong, I've only killed a useless piece of trash and humiliated a shameless old man. How am I worthy of being in public? Lin Feng stopped walking and looked at the young man indifferently. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.